Two bets already in place for the Open Championship at Royal Portrush. First up, Ryan Fox, 80-1 with 5 places. He's a long shot. Ditto for Seb Straka, got him at 100-1, still available at 75-1 at coolbet.com right now, if that's the route that you want to go. I saved you some time. You don't need to watch the entire episode unless you want some club giveaways, some ticket giveaways, some in-depth research on the course, the stats, the players, the other courses that matter this week for the final major of 2025. And if you like accents, boy, do we got accents for you, all right? This is the Pat Mayo Experience final major research show of the year. Let's go.
Entering the Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog. Code Mayo at Underdog right now. Get you a deposit bonus of up to $1,000, and NFL's on the way. There's $22 million of guaranteed money available for football in just drafts only. So if you like golf, you like football, good time to get in. Additionally, smash the like to this episode, sub to Mayo Media Network. You do that and give me your winner of the Open Championship down in the comment section, and you'll get into a draw for a free PXG Black Ops driver given away the day after the Open Championship on the show, the Pat Mayo Experience. So you can do that, and you can rate the audio shows 5 stars on Apple and Spotify when you subscribe to it, and leave the same thing down there, your winner. You can have the same winner for all 3. It doesn't matter who wins. You just need to do it. That gives you 2 more ballots in that driver draw. Additionally, my newsletter is free down in the description. If you reply to the one that I send out this time around, I have tickets to the Wyndham Championship. I got 8 of them to give away. I don't know if I want to make that for 2 people, all 4 days, 4 people, just 2 days. Let me know if you're in the area. I've heard from a few people already. If you would like some tickets to the Wyndham Championship, they gave me a whole bunch. I went last year. It was an absolute blast. Highly recommend if you're in the area to go check out Sedgefield, because I think this tournament, being the final event before the FedEx Cup playoffs, will draw some pretty decent names this time around, because there's a lot of guys fighting to get into that final top 75 for the FedEx Cup playoffs. But we're here to talk about the Open Championship back at Royal Portrush for the first time since 2019, where Shane Lowry was a winner. And we're going to talk about that leaderboard with our guests a little bit later on. We got Niall Lyons from Odds Checker, who's going to be at the course, was there in 2019 as well, and shares his in-depth knowledge on why this course is going to be a little bit different. Frankly, it's because there's not that many bunkers around the course and elevated greens. And way more undulation than courses that you see in Scotland and in England. So around the green is going to matter a whole lot more than you think, and we're going to find a course that potentially correlates to that a little bit later on and scan that leaderboard. Tom Jacobs from the Mayo Media Network, DP World Tour Picks and Bets host, is here to talk about some sleepers from the back end from the DP World Tour that you can utilize in top 20, top 30 markets, potentially on DraftKings. Wherever it is that you play, you're going to need some genuine sleeper names for this tournament, because we see them pop up every single time at the Open Championship, plus a weather report and everything that you're going to need to know to get yourself prepped, because we got a full week of Open Championship coverage coming. Additionally, I was thinking about doing a watch along either Thursday morning or Friday morning on top of the content, because I'm up with the kids. I'm going to be up super early watching this. If you're going to be up super early, please, in the comments, let me know. Email me to let me know. If there's more than like 5 people who would tune into something like that, then I might end up doing it. Might need your help for someone to be a guest on this, because I don't think Feinberg is going to be up at 5 a.m. my time, which is 4 a.m. Eastern time, in order to do this. Maybe it ends up being like 5 a.m. Eastern time. Who knows? But it's something that you get to hear Sleepy Pat as he's like angry in the morning before I've had my coffee, but just enthralled, because I love watching the Open Championship in the early morning. You see Darren Clark smoking some heaters off of the first tee, my single favorite part of the Open Championship. These old dudes you just wouldn't get any coverage on. And everyone starts from the first tee at the Open Championship. Some of the longest days of golf watching. Wouldn't expect anyone to tune into all 14 hours of golf. I mean, I'm not going to tune into all 14 hours of golf. I have to move my body at some point, but I really love that they start off crack it on, go to sunset, at least for the first 2 rounds. Of note, this cut line is a little bit different than some of the other regular tournaments. We're just coming off the heels of the US Open, where it's top 60 and ties make the cut. It's top 70 and ties make the cut at the Open Championship, similar to the PGA Championship. In that sense, it's a full field of 156 players. We'll get the final field determination following the Scottish Open, because the final 3 players who finish who are not yet qualified at the top of the leaderboard at the Scottish will earn their place at Portrush this time around. I'm very excited to watch Portrush. We got waterlogged last time. It wasn't the most visually stunning experience to see on TV. It was just wet and it was foggy and it wasn't great. This time around, there is some rain in the forecast, and if the weather holds true when we get to the weather report, Sunday looks like it's going to be a nightmare. I doubt a week out from Sunday that weather's actually going to hold, knowing how much the weather can change being directly on the sea anyway. But the elements are going to play a huge factor this week, and as I already mentioned, Portrush has a lot of undulation, far more than the regular Open Championship Rota. It has the fewest bunkers. I think there's only 35 on the course. You don't want to get into them. Trust me on that one. Driving itself is fairly average. It's not that difficult. You don't want to miss the fairway. That brings a world of problems. So long and straight is the way you want to go. I would even sacrifice a little bit of distance for some accuracy, because this isn't a full driver heavy course at the same time either. You're going to take a lot of different clubs off the tees, especially some of the longer hitters, unless they're trying to go for number 5, which is completely gettable with the right wind, especially if it plays downwind. The first 5 holes generally do play downwind. That we're going to see an opportunity where some guys are just going to hit, like, I wouldn't say 5 irons off the tee. They'll probably try to turn a 4 iron into something like the Rorys and Brysons of the world, although they might just go full hog. But you really do not want to miss the fairways, and you need to understand how to utilize the course contours. We saw that in 2019. There were only 5 Americans inside the top 20. Brooks being one of them, who really grinded it out on the Challenge Tour before he came over to American, played more of these style of courses. And then you just saw a lot of random Europeans and international players, even Australians, pop up inside the top 20. Most of that to do with, hey, I know I can't play this shot. And unlike most of the other open Rota courses with these elevated greens, you're going to have to put the ball in the air. There's no bump and run, rolling the ball up outside of 2 or 3 holes. Most of them you're going to need to carry. So the short game at this course, I think, is going to be far more reminiscent of what you see in Florida golf more than anything else, because they're going to be so tightly mown surfaces around the greens. Obviously, it's not Bermuda. It's going to be fescue in the natural terrain. So the club is going to interact with that turf a little bit differently, but it's going to be the same sort of concept, where at the Scottish Open this week, you're going to see guys take an 8 iron out, bump it up over there, roll it on the ground, get it to curve back towards the hole. You're not going to be able to do that for most of the holes at Royal Portrush. So it kind of takes some of the guys out of the equation for me. Like, I love Victor. I bet Victor in Scotland. We'll see how he ends up doing. He was making a run on Saturday before I started this recording, but I don't like his chances at a course where you desperately need to get it up and down, because if the wind starts coming, you're going to miss greens and regulation. You're going to have to get it up and down. And when I mean up and down, I don't mean like just the generic sense of here's the stat that we look at for up and down. I mean like up in the air, stop it on the ground, somewhere where like Justin Thomas might succeed, although his driving has been so poor that maybe you don't look at Justin Thomas. But that sort of short game is what you're going to need to have. Frankly, that's why Shane Lowry is one of the best around the green players in the world. And we've seen him dominate at the Florida courses, and this is where he ends up winning his Open Championship. Also won at Wentworth, which is not going to be a similar style of course, but when you see that the overall head and the aerial shots of this course, it's not going to look like St. Andrews. It's not going to look like Royal Liverpool. It's one of its own kind of things. So you don't need to be the longest player off the tee, but your total driving is going to need to be pretty high in order to compete this week. But that's enough for me as a preamble for this event. I think it's best that if we break down the scorecard and we take a look at what this course is going to be presenting in front of us. Let's hit it. Royal Portrush is a par 71 playing a 7,381 yards fescue greens, just over 5,000 in square footage, so not as gigantic as some of the Open Rota courses, as previously mentioned already twice on this show. The fewest bunkers in the Open Rota, I was correct. 35 is where you're going to go. 0 water hazards on the course. And you need to get your bones on the opening holes here. Number one plays under par, or number one plays over par. Number one is actually quite daunting, one of the most difficult tee shots on the course. After that, though, Shane Lowry absolutely dominated the first 5 holes of this course. Number 2 is the easiest hole on the course. Number 3 is a par 3 at 172 yards, and it is the easiest by far of the par 3s. It plays under par. Then number 4, relatively difficult. Then you get to number 5, which is a potential drivable par 4. Guys made eagle there in 2019, a 24% birdie rate, and it plays as the 4th easiest hole on the course. You have 3 of the 5 easiest holes in the opening 5. So if you're not getting off to a hot start at this course, it's going to be tremendously difficult in order to score. So be very wary of that when you're chasing a first round leader, or if your guys are in the lead, because then it just gets kind of difficult. For example, of the final 5 holes, 3 of the 5 most difficult holes on the course are amongst the final 5. There's 3 par 5s on the course. You need to get all of them. Number 7 is the one that you have the best chance of making eagle on, but outside of that, and the par 4, it's going to be pretty difficult to find your birdies. The other easiest hole outside of the par 5s is number 10. It has right around an 18% birdie rate. It plays slightly below par. It's 446 yards. The holes here aren't all that long. So when we start thinking about it in that sense, overall distance isn't going to mean as much as maybe some of the other majors, especially something like the U.S. Open, although we did just see J.J. Spaun end up winning there. A lot of bummers right behind him on that leaderboard. And listen, long and straight, it's going to go a long way at any course that you play, but with the high winds and the way that these fairways can roll out, that's not necessarily going to be the best plan of attack. Hitting it to the proper areas, using the undulations, using those slopes, getting it to the right funnel areas for those second shots. There's a lot of blind shots around this course as well. And there are several signature holes. The 4th hole is that long par 4, measures 480 yards. There's out of bounds to the right. There's thick rough on the left. That's the 6th most difficult on the course. Bogey or worse is made 25% of the time people get to that tee. Only an 8% birdie rate. So par is going to be great on about 12 of these holes. Then you have to make your bones on those easiest ones. If you're not doing that, it's going to be tough. So when we look in the modeling a little bit later on, par 4 scoring is going to be so important this week because it's about average for par 3s, average for par 5s in terms of how difficult they are in terms of scoring. Par 4s, difficult to score on because there are blow-ups everywhere. And then we have the 16th hole. The 16th hole is named Calamity Corner. It is a super long 232-yard par 3. It's played to a green. It's right over a huge ravine, short and right. There's mounds, there's hollows to the back left of the green. It's not going to be a whole lot of fun. Big numbers are made there. In 2019, the field bogeyed this hole 27% of the time. Although the double or worse rate wasn't all that bad. It was only 1.5%, considering hole number 11, which is the most difficult hole on the course, has a 6% double or worse rate. That trying to think about that, you're just probably going to make bogey. And like taking a look at the scorecard, something that Niall and I will talk about a little bit later on, with so many difficult holes coming down the stretch once you get to number 14, no lead is going to be safe here unless it's really padded. That someone could sun run early in better conditions, post a score, and watch the field drop back to them because the second 9 is going to be so much more difficult than the front 9. The longer you play, the more that you get into the elements. If that happens on Sunday, that guys can just absolutely blow up, much like we saw at Oakmont last time around. There's long, steep runoffs. There's Gorse punishes errant shots in potential locations. There's out of bounds just off some of the holes, and there's going to be swirling winds. These par 3s are brutal outside of the par 3, number 3, which might play downwind. None of them are automatic pars, but par is exactly what you want to make. As mentioned, the drivable par 5th and number 7 are both reachable, good eagle opportunities after a really good drive, and the rest of them are just long, grinded out stretches like holes 14 through 18, as I mentioned before. Taking a look back at some of the past winners of the Open Championship, we had -9 at Royal Troon last year with Xander. He was a 12-1 second favorite in the field wins. Then in that really wet year in 2013 at Royal Liverpool, Brian Harman won by a bunch of strokes, -13 at 125-1. Colin Morikawa won in 2021. Obviously, Cam Smith won at the old course in 2022, -20 and -15. They were 20-1 and 30-1. Then you had Shane Lowry, who was right around 80-1, as low as 50-1 in some spots in 2019 when he ended up winning here. So there are just different ways that you can look at it. And some of the main things I would try to take a look at of what is different between Royal Portrush and some of the other open rota courses. So first off, this is in Northern Ireland. It's not in England or in Scotland. So that just inherently makes it makes it different in terms of overall geography. And the topography is kind of the same way as well. There's elevated dunes, there's coastal cliffs. Most of the other rota courses are flat. They have undulating terrain at venues like Hoylake and St. Andrews, but not to the level that we see at Portrush. And most of the courses, the historic courses, really haven't changed all that much over time. They've been lengthened in some spots, but previous to 2019, there was 2 new holes added to Portrush, 7 and 8 brand new holes for 2019, removing some of the more inland holes. Those ones go out towards the water. They're more difficult. They bring more wind into play. They bring more terrain into play, and they're just frankly way more scenic. 2 fantastic holes, and one of them is a par 5. It's that one that I talked about that you can get to into, and then we come back with a 445-yard par 4, which plays a bit over par, but is right around average for the course. Again, par is going to be great on that hole. Taking a look at the fairways, they're average size width. They're playable off the tee, but as I mentioned, there's gorse, there's rough. It's wider at the old course. It's tighter at Muirfield. It falls somewhere in between in terms of the landing areas for most of these fairways. But again, this is not a driver off the tee on every single one of these holes. It'll be wind dependent. It will be hole dependent. It'll be score dependent for a lot of players. How big of a number do you want to put into play? If you just need to tread water and make your pars, maybe you're hitting a 3-wood. Maybe you're hitting a 4-iron off a lot of these. Maybe a 7-wood and just trying to turn it over. If you can shape that shot a little bit better, you need to go make the cut and make birdies. All of a sudden, we're looking at you got to go wild with the smoke wagon right off the tee. Like Rory was the perfect example of this. He was so awful in round 1 and then followed it up with the 65 to still miss the cut, but it was the second best round of the week of anyone. He just mashed off the tee that week. The weather and the impact at Portrush, it's more isolated, but it's exposed due to the cliffside terrain. There's more of an inland feel at some of the other ones. Even St. Andrews, Royal Troon, Birkdale play a bit more inland, so they're less affected by maybe swirling gusts in terms of how this is all going to play. So overall, I'm very excited to check this out. And as I teased a little bit before in terms of Florida golf, and we start breaking down the leaderboard, it's PGA National is what we need to look at here. Just taking a look at some of the guys who are at the very top last time around. They're all guys that have won at PGA National, guys that have come second at PGA National, or like consistently inside the top 5. It's kind of crazy when you take a look at that leaderboard, like, wow, those are guys that I know from just playing, and that makes a lot of sense. You have to there's no rolling it up to any of those greens, missing fairways. You can do at PGA National, but it's not going to be great. You can just roll off the first cut a little bit, but generally if you miss fairways at PGA National, you're in the water. Obviously, that's not the case here, but it could be just as penal if you have to take an unplayable from one of these gorse brushes. And then you see, hey, Shane Lowry won. He's like Mr. PGA National. Tommy's just missed out on a playoff there over the years. Brooks has lost in a playoff. Ricky has won there. He was inside the top 10 last time. So there's just a ton to look at from that regard. Even someone like Alex Noren, who just missed the playoff the year that Justin Thomas ended up winning. And Justin Thomas was inside the top 20 as well. So the around the green and iron play and factoring in the swales of those winds, which swirl around. It's an exposed course. It's not completely coastal, but close enough that the weather is going to make a huge impact. That's where I would be looking for the prototypes. The problem is when we start to look at that is you don't always get the best fields at PGA National, especially lately since it's become the Cognizant Classic, that there are certain guys that just never play there. Like, hey, listen, I'm sure that Scotty Scheffler is going to be fine. When I take a look at the PGA National course history, he's going to rate out very poorly because I don't even know if he's ever actually played at PGA National over the course of his career. So you have to keep that in mind as well as we go through with it. But let's take a look a bit more in depth at the leaderboard itself from fantasynational.com. fantasynational.com/Mayo will get you 20% off over there right now. If you're looking for it, the field is already loaded in. for the DraftKings pricing if you want to take a look at everything. And you can see Royal Portrush. It might still load up to Royal Troon at the moment, but you just click on course change, go to Royal Portrush, you'll be off to the races. Putting is really difficult at this course because the greens are so slow. There's so much undulation. It will probably have been helpful to play the Scottish in terms of green speed, but these ones are way bumpier, and the chipping ends up becoming a little bit of a problem too. Hence why those players from Tight Lies do a little bit better here as well, because you can actually get spin on it, and if you can land it near the hole and stop the ball, whereas that's going to be a bit more difficult off some of the flatter lies or downhill lies that you're going to have at most open courses, this one is going to be a little bit different. You have to pop the ball up. You have to get it to stop. Can you control your spin? Guys that control their spin can be pretty good here. As I mentioned before, guys that dominated on par fours did really well. The par threes are so hard that people just simply are not going out and making a ton of birdies. We take a look at the par threes on the scorecard. We say number 3, the 168 yard, we played slightly below par, 15% birdie rate, but these are just the par holes overall. So 71%, 72%, 70%, 67% par rate on the par threes. Just don't get crazy making bogeys. They're bogeyed far more often than they're birdied, but at the same time, they're par. That's the winning score on these par threes. Just play those at even for the week and figure out what the hell else you can do on this course to get it going. You can see the whole composition. There's the one short par 4. Most of them play between 400 and 450 yards, so not super long. The really difficult ones are just a shade under 500 yards, between 475 and 500. There's the very reachable par 5, and the other ones are there. If you can hit a great drive, you can get there. The cut line last time around was +2 in 2019, but I feel like it played a little bit easier than probably it should have, especially in round 2. There were some good scores round 2 and round 3. You can see those single round scores that the most common was 71, which was even par. The next most common was 1 under par, that when you don't get extreme weather at an Open Championship course, they become a lot easier. Now, if you're not hitting the ball exactly where you are, there's still big numbers to be made out there, but you can see even throughout the week, there was a 63, there was 465s, there was 566s, 1567s. Scores were out there. Shane Lowry I think he was the one who shot the 63 on Saturday. He just could not miss at this course. So that's what we're looking at for in terms of the scorecard. Let's dig back a little bit to 2019 to see what we're seeing from the guys at the top of this course. So let's click on Shane Lowry. We can go to where he has won. We just sort by wins. He doesn't have many, so that's the one that's going to be up there. The Open in 2019. We can take a look at the strokes gained. Do we have much strokes gained information? No, we just have tee and approach. So these are off. I would not look at these. From the Open Championship, we just don't get good data that if there's no putting or around the green, you can tell that these are off. We'll go back to the leaderboard to check those out. I would guess that the fairways and greens and regulation numbers are probably going to be, nope, they're not in there anywhere. Just distance was calculated. We have better ways to assess stats and get them into our system now than we did in 2019. But just take a look at some of these guys. So we'll go to Lowry again. We'll go to Fleetwood, go to Finau, Lee Westwood, Brooks Koepka, Robert McIntyre, Tyrrell Hatton, and just take a look at these guys and see how they've done at, let's say, PGA National over the years. So the Honda Classic, 5th, 2nd, and then we still have the Cognizant Classic where he was 11th. So it's pretty good for him coming into this, a game that translates over. How does Tommy Fleetwood done at the Honda over the years? The Honda, he's been 3rd, 4th, and a miscut. So twice he was pretty damn good there. I have no idea how Finau has been at that course over time. Honda, not been good. Okay, so Finau is an outlier in that regard of the guys that we're looking at up there. We'll take a look at Honda for Lee Westwood. Lee Westwood's been good, not great, but he does have 4 top 10s and 2 fourth place finishes over the course of his career. He hadn't been playing a ton of golf coming in. And listen, he's 53 years old right now, so I know Cuss is probably going to pick him on the Monday show, but other than that, let's see. We have Brooks. Brooks has a playoff loss here to Ricky in 2019. The last time he played it was 2022. Ended up with a T16. How has Bobby Mack done there over the years? And these are all the guys that finished. Do we have a Cognizant? Guess we just have no information for Robert McIntyre from the course. How about Tyrrell Hatton? I remember betting Tyrrell Hatton there one year, and he lost so many strokes putting, and I think he was first tee to green. Yeah, this was probably, he wasn't first tee to green, but he was first in, couldn't chip. I guess he was 4th that year. maybe he ended up actually making his putts over the weekend. Everything ended up falling back. I just remember him grinding with that cut line. A really bad round 1, I think it was for him. Now I'm just trying to mix up all the years in my mind. Let's see with Hatton from that year. Hatton was 68, 67. No, actually, it's just had a very good run. Maybe it was the next year that didn't work out so well for him there. Either way, he does have another Florida win as well. So maybe you want to combine Bay Hill for some of the more wind-affected longer holes at this course. Because a lot of these guys have done pretty well over time too. Danny Willett, I feel like, has done pretty well at the Honda, although he played really well at Doral one year. Not great at the Honda, but 2 made cuts, gains on approach each time. And I think approach is going to mean more than driving as long as you're not completely wayward. I think you can drive yourself out of this tournament, but at the same time, you don't necessarily need to gain the most strokes in the field off the tee. You just need to be properly positioned. It's going to be irons. You're going to be your ability to save yourself on this course and avoid some of the really big numbers. You had Fowler, who's a winner at PGA National, Reed, Tom Lewis, Justin Thomas, who's a winner at PGA National. Noren missed out on that playoff with Thomas and Luke List that year. See, Rahm's just never really played great Florida golf whatsoever, yet he was T11 here. He's been really good at Open Championships over the course of his career. Molinari's won at Bay Hill. Finau's been really good at Bay Hill in the past, too. Who else? Ryan Fox was, I think, pretty good at PGA National this year. Let's see, Lucas Bjerregaard, haven't heard of him in ages. Cam Smith has won the Players. So again, Florida golf is what you're looking for. Fitz very good at Bay Hill over the years too. So these are the types of guys that were prevailed in 2019. Is that going to be the same again? Who knows? But I think it's worth looking at when we go and take a look. I've already started to build out a little bit of a model for the Open, but it's nice that it's already up on DraftKings right now. We're going to get to Niall and Tom here in a minute, but I did just want to take a look at the PGA National stats before we got into it. See, PGA National champion. Why not? And take a look at the last 12 rounds for some of these players overall. Take a look at the averages. You can see, Rory has 12 rounds. When does that date back to? I think he has the win here. He played the Classic this year. I don't even remember that. Oh, the Classic. That's why it wasn't showing up instead of Cognizant. So yeah, when they changed that, the another thing when you get like an API data feed coming in, that it's not always the most reliable when you're thinking about what things are actually called versus what they're called in the system. So 2015, 2016, 18, and 24 for Rory. Although he did have some nice results here earlier on in his career. Let's see who the best players are in strokes gained total. It's Fleetwood, Thomas, Lowry. Okay, so all 3 of those guys. We had first, second, and 11th, Kevin Yu. Oh my God, I can lose more money on Kevin Yu at a major? Sign me up! Do it every single major. It never really works out. Spieth, Kevin Yu and Spieth only have the 4 rounds. Straka, who I have money on already, is up there. Henley is kind of like Mr. PGA National, and I think that was the site of his first win. It was there or Sony where he got it. And Henley's been kind of out of sight, out of mind recently, although he did re-pop up at the Travelers. That was the last time that we saw him. Great form coming in. The putting's doing coming in. Man, am I really going to bet on Russell Henley to win the Open Championship? He kind of fits that mold off the tee that I'm looking for. He's wildly accurate. He doesn't have plus distance, but he's not like, Brendan Todd or me out there at the same time. We've seen some peak performances. He won the API. He was top 10 at the Honda. Has played the Honda really well, obviously, over the course of his career. He got the win there in 2014. Top 10s both times he's played them. Hasn't finished outside the top 25 in each of the past 4 times. The problem is it feels like he gets got by like one of the elite players, but I don't even know what he's coming in at right now. Let's see here. Where are we at the Open Championship for old Russell Henley? Coolbet.com, by the way, if you live in Canada outside of Ontario, in the comment section, you can find a promo code to get yourself a deposit bonus out there as well. Go to the majors, go to the Open Championship, see what we're cooking with here. Where is old Russell Henley? Hatton's going to be a very popular pick this week. Justin Thomas all the way down at 37-1. It's very similar to what he was at the Scottish. Brooks and Cantlay are there. Where the hell is Henley? Henley's down at 60? Unless I can find a better number than that, that seems pretty good, and that kind of adds to the overall. You see Sepp is still 75 right there. Where is Ryan Fox? Ryan Fox is 90 at Coolbet. I wanted to take the 5 places, so I bet him to get the top 5 along with him. But if you wanted the 90s, you got 90 on him. You got Sepp at 75, and I think Russell Henley, now that I talked this through, is going to end up being added to this card. Not where I thought I'd be at the Open Championship, honestly. How has he played at Opens? Maybe that's something that I can talk myself out of it. feel like he was pretty good there 2 years ago or last year. Oh yeah, coming off a top 5 at the Open a year ago. First real success he had experienced there. All right, Russell Henley, you might be making the team here. Min Woo has played very well there in his 3 tournaments. Wyndham Clark, Daniel Berger, Justin Suh. I forgot he made this tournament. I think he won a tournament in like Argentina in order to get in. Chris Kirk, Tyrrell Hatton, Adam Scott is on that list. Sergio, Cam Young, Phil Mickelson, Harris English, Nicholas Niergaard Moeller. We have Matteo Montesero is up there as well. I don't even recall him ever playing in the Honda or the Classic or the Cognizant. Let's see here. At the Honda, this is from like 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, 12th and 29th. I mean, Montesero is a shorter hitter that could get some of this stuff done. He's played very well at Links Golf, not half as good as someone like Ryan Fox. We'll see with the Classic. He missed the cut at the Cognizant this time around. Nick Taylor, Mackenzie Hughes, obviously. Lee Westwood, Ricky Fowler, Justin Leonard. The problem with this is going to be is that guys either have very few rounds there, like when we start getting into just so many guys have 0 rounds. Scheffler, Rahm, Ludwig, Morikawa. I don't understand why Morikawa doesn't play at PGA National. It seems like a really good course for him. And maybe this will be one for him as well, because his around the green is vastly improved. No Hideki, no Burmeister, McKibben, or Potgieter. So a lot of the bigger names, we're talking about who has the most strokes gained at some of these courses, that maybe it's just by default, it goes to some of the better players that generally play these courses. You also have to factor that in versus the fields that they're going up against. But I do think that this was an interesting exercise to look for some people. I mean, that's why I like Straka. Henley is now a new name up there. Minwoo's going to come up a little bit later on. Kevin Yu is not someone I expected to be near the top of this list. So you can dig in with your more research. I'm going to do more towards the end of the show. I'm going to talk to Tom Jacobs, but coming up next, I got Niall Lyons from Odds Checker, who was there in 2019, who's going to be there this year, giving us the tips of what we see in person versus what we don't see on TV and how that can affect the players that we want to pick this week. Plus, he's going to tell you, if you're going to Portrush, which a couple of my friends are, where to stand if you want to see the most action. Stay tuned. I was having some problems sleeping. When anyone has little kids, that's probably going to be the case. They'll come up, wake you up in the middle of the night for no real apparent reason. So you're waking up, you're going back to sleep, you're waking up, going back to sleep. It's not the best sleep. I put my Apple Watch on and tried to track my sleep tracker. It was not going well. A lot of that changed once I got a Helix mattress, however, because I was able to customize it to both what I want, what my wife wants, and now we are sleeping throughout the night. The little noises that would just normally wake you up when you're not sleeping well, no longer the case for me. No more back pain either, because I'm actually sleeping on a mattress that is perfect for what my back demands, which is a lot because I have a terrible back. The one that I had before my Helix mattress, I spent a lot of money on it. It was bad after like 2 years. It had like the divot in it from where I sleep. It was unflippable. It was a horrendous waste of money. Not only is the Helix mattress I have now way better, it was also significantly cheaper. And it just showed up to my door in a box. Very easy to get onto my bed frame and just start using right away. So you can have all your problems solved with a Helix mattress as well. So you can go to helixsleep.com/Mayo for 27% off site-wide. That is exclusive to listeners of the Pat Mayo Experience. That's helixsleep.com/Mayo for 27% off site-wide. Make sure to enter my show name after checkout so they know that I sent you. helixsleep.com/Mayo. Even though the 4th of July is in the rearview mirror, there's still a massive opportunity to get some Omaha steaks, get outside, have a cookout, and I'm going to make that easy for you, because if you go to omahasteaks.com right now, you can get 50% off site-wide, plus my listeners are going to get an extra $45 off with promo code MAYO at checkout. There's no better thing to do in the summer. You have the family over, you have the friends over, you're having some drinks, the kids are playing in the yard, you're spraying a hose at them like that creepy guy in Billy Madison, and you have luscious steaks on the grill. And it doesn't even need to be steaks. It could be anything that you want, because Omaha Steaks has it done for you. They also carry mouth-watering burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, and delectable desserts. So get fired up this year, this summer, with Omaha Steaks, and visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and get an extra $45 off by using promo code MAYO at checkout. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $45 off with promo code MAYO at checkout. See site for details. All right, let's get some boots on the ground to talk about Royal Portrush itself. Niall Lyons from Odds Checker is going to be at the course at Royal Portrush, and you were there in 2019 as well. Well, what do you think is going to be different this time around? Is it looking like a little bit better weather?
It definitely is. We're due to get some really hot weather this weekend. It's actually been a really dry and hot spring, which is it's unlike Northern Ireland. It's unlike Ireland. It really is. But the course manager there was slightly worried about not being able to grow the rough as much as he would like to, and that was a couple of months ago. He was looking a bit of rain. Now June, we did get a fair amount of rain, but it hasn't rained in a few days here, and the rest of this week looks absolutely tremendous. We're getting weather towards 25 to 30 degrees for the rest of the week, and yeah, the weather absolutely looks great the week of it as well. There's just a slight bit of rain forecast maybe for Thursday, the first day's play, but largely speaking, it's going to be dry, and that'll be music to the ears of the course manager, because he wanted it firmer than last time. We had a lot of rain heading into 2019, and the course was really green, and he was keen to get it firmer this time around, and I think he's going to get his wish now.
So what do you make of how the skill sets are going to play if it's not like it was so waterlogged last time that off the tee was incredibly difficult, that if you missed the fairway, you were pretty much dead. It was one of the harder driving courses on tour. Now Lowry ended up getting there because I'm guessing because of the soft conditions, guys were able to go pin seek at some of these greens. Are you saying that's probably not going to be the case this time around?
Well, it remains to be seen just how far they've been able to grow the rough. As I say, a bit of rain helps, and we haven't had a lot of it. So off the tee, I think it's fairly generous. It's a great start. It's a gentle opening hole, but you've got out of bounds left and out of bounds right, and obviously McIlroy will be looking to not to repeat what he did there in 2019 on hole one, but it's a gentle opening hole, kind of goes uphill towards the green, and out of bounds features on right side of 2. It features out of bounds right side of 4. There's out of bounds over the green on 5. So there are dangers off the tee in the first 5 opening holes, but that is where you have to make your score. They're the easiest holes in the golf course, often played downwind. And then when you turn at 5 to the uphill par 3 at 6, everything then is back in towards the clubhouse. So it definitely gets tougher to score there. Shane Lowry was 9 under for holes 1 to 5 in 2019. That's where he made his score. So yeah, off the tee, there's dangers, especially opening. But if you hit the fairways in the opening 5 holes, that's where you've got to score. But as far as links courses go, this is fairly different to the rest that we play in the UK. Especially compared to the likes of St Andrews. The greens here are often raised. The majority of them are raised with runoffs. So this isn't the links course to be played along the ground. This has to be played through the air, no matter what the weather is, no matter, even if it's firmer on the run-in, you're not going to be able to run balls up these slopes onto the greens. And it definitely is a second shot golf course for me, but there's going to be plenty of greens missed, which puts a lot of pressure on the short game. So it's no surprise really that Shane Lowry came out in top 2019. You know, he's got great links pedigree. He's got a real silky touch around the greens, and it's no doubt going to come to the fore here. You're going to miss greens long, and then have chipping downhill, down green to a front pin that there's a false front off the slope. This regularly happens on this golf course. So you're going to need a really silky short game, and your irons are going to need to be on fire. What you do off the tee, I don't know if it's going to determine the week, but certainly thereafter is where the important shots lie.
You know, it seems like, especially if it does end up getting baked out, that guys like someone like Rory doesn't necessarily have to hit driver if he doesn't want to. If he wants to improve his accuracy, he can take out a 7 wood, he can take out an iron, because some of these holes, especially if it's downwind, just simply don't demand taking the smoke wagon out off the tee to try to get yourself in close. I guess the closer you are, the easier it's going to be to flight through the air. But like, well, it's the wind effect of this course, because if guys have to put the ball in the air with raised greens, obviously then the wind comes into play. Are you then just looking at players who predominantly play well in the wind? Because that's also kind of what we saw last time. Even someone like Finau, who ended up near the top of the leaderboard, still not so much at this point, but in 2019 was one of the better wind players in the world.
Yeah, I definitely think you're going to have a similar profile to what the players that you got in 2019. Many of them were links specialists. Many of them had wins on links courses before. But if you look through them, it wasn't, the likes of Brian Harman who won the Open, who, can pierce the ball low and often run the ball along the ground. These guys, Shane Lowry, Tony Finau, Tommy Fleetwood, Brooks Koepka, they can pierce the ball through the wind and have some knockdown shots, but primarily they play the ball through the air. And I think that's why they were able to score well at Portrush. I think it's going to be the same this time around. I don't think we'll get as bad a weather as what we got as last time. I don't think the wind is going to play the same than what it did in 2019. But greens are inevitably going to be missed here. It's a relatively long par 71. There's going to be pressure on your iron play. And it's just the fault. I don't think people will realize, even on TV, until you actually set foot on the property, that it really, you just see it with your own eyes, how raised the greens are throughout the golf course. It's a huge part of it. And as I say, it's just no surprise that Shane Lowry got there the last time. So do we look at similar profile golfers, guys who have played well on links courses, but who have a really silky short game? I think that's where I'm looking.
Yeah, the around the green was one of the most difficult of the year and one of the most difficult of any Open Championship last time around. Now, again, is it because of the greens? Is it because of the conditions? Because the greens played really tough too, and the greens were super slow last time around. If it's going to be a bit more baked out, would you guess that the greens are going to play a little bit faster?
I think the greens will play a bit faster, yes, but it's literally where you're going to be playing from towards these pins. Often there's front pins with the false fronts, and if you overshoot a green, you're going to have a really hard job of getting the ball either close to the hole or keeping it on the green for it not to be running off the front. So there's a real test around here, and lucky I've got the ear of Duncan Carey, who's provides strategy for numerous golfers, including Cam Smith and Leishman and the likes of Rory McIlroy. And he's got on to me and he's saying the exact same thing. The hardest part of the examination here is around the greens.
Yeah, so good short game is something that we're going to have to focus on. Do you think that there's a difference between having a great short game, let's say in Florida or California, and then understanding how to manipulate the greens, the undulations at an Open Championship, specifically at this course, where just even to look at last time in the leaderboard, you kind of mentioned it. Lowry, Fleetwood, Westwood was fourth, who got himself back in to this tournament as a 53-year-old. But Willett, Hatton, Fowler. Fowler has a Scottish Open win. Obviously, Brooks had played on the Challenge Tour before coming over to America. Then you even have Bobby Mack, Molinari, Alex Noren, Tom Lewis was up there, Patrick Reed, like all these guys that you wouldn't consider. Like the only real bomber on that list is Brooks, and it even seemed like he dialed it back a little bit. Then he got stuck with JB Holmes in the final round, and that just did not go well for his patience level. So he probably could have finished probably higher on the leaderboard that time around. But these are all guys that I equate to having good short games. But is there something specifically about the types of shots you need to play here? Because honestly, I'm actually surprised Spieth didn't end up higher in 2019.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's one that's on my list. But obviously, last time out at the Travelers, it didn't go according to plan. It remains to be seen what kind of shape that he's in. But he's got the perfect game for around these greens, and obviously he has a great Open record. I think he's 8 top 30s or something on the trot in this event. So yeah, guys like that, just notoriously great short game players. I think that's where you got to look to. I don't think the task there. Is the playing field level slightly around the greens simply because it's that tough? The shots around the greens are that intricate and delicate that it maybe does become tougher. But as you say, it was short game specialists that came out on top last time. So yeah, there's a few of them that remain on my list for next week.
Yeah, looking at just even the top 20 from last time around, there were 5 Americans in the top 20. I do not recall any major with so few American players near the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, well, like Americans have won 3 of the last 4 of these Open Championships, but my question to you is, because I have looked down the list and I find it hard, extremely difficult, bar Scotty Scheffler, to make a case for any of them.
I
I don't
guess
know. Do you think differently?
Yeah, I've been on this all year, and we'll end up seeing how it goes. But I do think we'll see how he ends up playing at the Scottish Open. He had one of the best rounds. He was the first round leader, I think, either last year or the year before, and then it was by far his best round. But he was inside the top 15 last time at Portrush. Feels like this is a better Justin Thomas course than most
Yeah.
of the Rota courses.
Tight lays around the greens. He's great at that. It's a reason why many of us have backed him numerous times around the Masters, but it hasn't come to fruition yet. But yeah, I totally agree with you. He's got great skills for around the greens here. It's just how well he drives a golf ball. There's been plenty of times where he's just not accurate enough. But it does remain to be seen whether they've got the rough as high as they like it, because there was concerns there a couple of months ago from the course manager Graham Bate that they were not going to get enough rain to grow the rough enough. Now, I don't know. I haven't got confirmation whether they have or not, but if it's a bit more lenient, I do think the fairways are relatively generous anyway. There's a few out of bounds spots, but generally speaking, there's room off the tee, and that could bode well for Justin Thomas. To be fair, one American that I kind of think it's on my radar now after a good last month or so is Cam Young. He's obviously got a great open record, a couple of top tens, a runner up, and I think the eighth was his other one. But he's been inside the top 7 at the end of 7 of his 12 open rounds. So he's clearly got a talent for this type of game around links golf courses, and of course he went well in the US Open for a long way. So obviously that's one of the trends that you look towards. Who played well in a previous major, who maybe hadn't really contended one before, and obviously Cam Young had contended the Open a few years previous, but he's got good credentials for this too, and I think he's about 66 to 1 plus. But he was the first American kind of after Scotty Scheffler that I was quite keen on.
Yeah, even to look at it, just kind of assess, and it's not to say that this is going to play exactly the same as it did in 2019. It's 6 years later, and obviously the conditions are going to be different. Then, I mean, if we get thrown a monkey wrench, like how often do the winds flip here? That all of a sudden you're playing the first 5 of them into the wind. Because we see that sometimes. I think it was at Carnoustie last time that the wind just played the opposite of what everyone was expecting one of the days, and it just screwed up the entire field. So you're always going to have those weather pockets for an advantage. But I look at this, I'm going to throw you some of these names and let me know where you kind of remember these names from a different course. Lowry, Fleetwood, Westwood, Brooks, Fowler, Willett. Hatton never really played there. McIntyre never really played there. Noren, Justin Thomas. Well, they'll say those. Those guys were all inside the top 11. Those are all guys that have dominated at PGA National over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got that down myself, and for one of those reasons, there's another player high up on my list who,
Raka?
It screams everything that I've been talking about so far as Min Woo Lee.
Ooh.
I mean, of course, he has a runner up at PGA National. He's got a Scottish Open victory. Obviously, this year he won in Texas. Bit of wind about in Texas. He's got an Australian PGA victory. His first win in the DP World Tour was in the Vic Open, and it absolutely blew a gale there on the Sunday of that event. And obviously, he's gone off the boil a little since winning in Texas, but he did play well in Detroit last time out. Played well throughout the bag. I think he finished 13th, and he's always one that I've thought would go well here at Portrush. Following, I was at a couple of practice days in 2019, and I did talk about the greens and the raised greens and the test that it would be for the short game. And I don't know why, but I didn't back Shane Larry answers on a postcard because everything fitted. And I think this time around, I was keeping Min Woo Lee for the last couple of years in my head for this, and I've been happy enough the way it goes this year. Obviously with a victory, and then just a bit of form last week, and obviously he's got Shane Larry's ex-caddy on the bag. Everything's going for him.
It's funny. I wrote up last. I vividly remember this because Shane Lowry was one of 3 guys who fit whatever trends that I was looking at for recent form coming in, link specialist. I think it was Brooks, someone, and then Lowry. And obviously, I bet the other two and just said, "Yeah, Shane Lowry can't win an Open. That's crazy."
Yeah, I was in a similar boat, and yeah, I was left to it. I couldn't believe I wasn't on him, especially after seeing with your eyes the test that it was going to be. We're talking a couple more names towards the top of the market. I kind of like the 2 Englishmen, Tommy Fleetwood and Tyrrell Hatton, and I think plenty are going to fall into the trap of backing Bobby McIntyre as opposed to Tyrrell Hatton, and I'm in the Hatton camp. Uh, 5 of the last 7 Open winners have been 32 years or older. Experience counts for a lot in Open Championships, and Hatton has a lot more experience than Bob McIntyre. Uh, he was very, very unlucky at Oakmont in the US Open, the way his ball came to rest after his tee shot in the 17th. 2 or 3 holes prior to that, I think he was strong favourite in the betting. He's got 2 Dunhill Links wins. He's won the BMW PGA at Wentworth. He's got an Arnold Palmer victory. Even played well at Live Dallas last time out, which was a very tough course there, Mayo. Very, very tough layout. So everything's going well for Hatton, and I think he's the exact same price as Robert McIntyre, 25-1 over here. And I think if you're choosing between those two, I definitely think you could fall into the trap of choosing Bobby, but Hatton's the right man.
Yeah, especially if Bobby ends up doing well at the Scottish Open again, that there's going to
Yeah.
be an overwhelming amount of support for him coming in. Plus, he had the top 10 last time. I'm with you. It just Hatton's major performances, even this year, have just been so much better. And his Open record is spotty, but when he spikes, which is kind of what you're looking for here if everything is rounding into form at the same time. I'm seeing him at 27-1 right now. That's at our friends at coolbet.com. Hit the description right now if you want to get in there. If you live in Canada, outside of Ontario, you can play at Coolbet. But I think that number will be better. But unless he wins this week in Spain, then I think that we're looking at something probably more 35-40-1 by the time that the odds reset. Because unless you're Bryson, all these live guys feel like they take a pounding in the market in favor of us rather than the other way because no one's really paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And all eyes will probably be on John Rahm, obviously, at Valderrama. And if he goes and wins, expect his 16-1 to come into 12 or 11-1. But I don't know whether it'll work out for him or not. But, Tommy Fleetwood's a big runner here once again. He'll be looking to banish the ghosts of 2019, going out with a great chance in the final group with Larry. And, 6 or 7 holes from the end, it was all but over. But he's in great form too. Second at the Travellers. Obviously, real putting woes there the final day again. But slower greens here help. I think if he's going to win a major, it's going to be an Open Championship. And if he's going to win even a PGA Tour event this side of the water, it's going to be on a links golf course. So obviously runner-up here in 2019. I think he's got everything going for him. It maybe surprise a few to hear that he's top 20 on the PGA Tour and strokes gained around the green. So that's a huge feather in his cap, I think, heading to Portrush as well. So he's got everything going for him, and it might just be his time.
What do you make of someone like, let's say, Bryson at this course? Because it's funny, although he's had 2 really good runs at the Masters the past 2 years, so I was dead wrong about that. But I always felt like the creativity needed at the Masters and at the Open did not suit Bryson's style of play. And maybe he's learning how to do that a little bit more. But it feels like, unless it's St. Andrews, where you can literally just bomb and gouge, and it really highlights a different type of player than most Open championships, that this is the one major that might elude Bryson a lot, like it did with Bubba Watson and a lot of the other like high-powered American big ball hitters.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. He's 18-1, 20-1 over here. As I said to a friend this morning, I would struggle to back him at 40s. I really, really would. Around obviously St Andrews does suit, but almost any other Open layout, I think he's going to find himself in trouble off the tee here, and he's going to find himself in some really difficult spots around the greens. Now, I was exactly the same as you on his credentials for Augusta the last couple of years, and I've been a big layer even in running throughout when he's been in contention the last couple of years there as well. Even though it was his iron play and his approach play that that counted himself out of it in the end. This time around, his short game's absolutely been unbelievable around there, which is hard to believe. So, is he learning? Maybe. Does he have the knack around these tight lies and around a links course? He really is not for me, and I can't believe that bookmakers around the world aren't dangling a bit of a bigger card about him, because I don't think there'll be many takers around that 20 to 1 mark.
Oh, see, I don't know about that. I think that there's a lot of people who are simply watching this tournament because they only know Bryson. He's been that big of an impact on people coming into the game, and I really noticed it as someone who backed him at the PGA and the U.S. Open. Just seeing some of the discourse surrounding Bryson and a lot of these new fans that they're just backing Bryson wherever. So maybe that's more of a North American thing, but I feel like they could list him at 10 to 1 and people would still bet him.
Yeah, it's the Irish over here. They'll always be supported. McIlroy, Harrington, Larry, they'll be bet every single time. As far as field books go, they'll be your biggest losers for any bookmaker in Ireland. But yeah, I certainly get your point about Bryson. And when I go to the golf course on Wednesday and Thursday, he's going to be the first golfer I seek out as well.
Well, there was someone who did end up having a very good finish here in 2019. You had mentioned that Lowry won at Wentworth. He has won at Wentworth as well, and he won the Irish Open, I believe, 3 years ago at a non-link style course. It's Ryan Fox, 2 wins already this year. He seems to prefer this type of layout. Tristan Lawrence would be the other one from way down the list. Obviously, he spiked at last year's Open Championship, but it seems like on these types of courses, they're both pretty big dudes, but that style of play ends up working really well for them. They feel very comfortable at this style of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's one of my success stories around Fox. Back them a few weeks ago when he won, so I was absolutely delighted with that. But he was at Portrush last week practicing. So he's got plenty in here, and he's got the perfect game for links courses too. Now, you say he did win an Irish Open, but he did. He was pipped to the post on an Irish links course in Donegal by Russell Knox. Must be about 7 or 8 years ago now as well. So he's got great links credentials, playing very good golf, and you've got 60, 60, 80 to 1, 80 to 1 out there for him as well. So yeah, I certainly couldn't put anyone off Ryan Fox.
Yeah, was there anyone else from down the list, potentially a DP World Tour only player like a Marco Penge or someone like that you could see end up doing well? Because I was shocked to see that his around the green numbers for such a gigantic bomber were so good.
Yeah, it's not for me, I have to say, Pat. I'm a really strong advocate of major championships being won by top 25 players in the world. Obviously, we've got data golf for that now as opposed to the world golf rankings, but it's not somewhere I personally go down to. I don't look for, obviously you've got even Tristan Lawrence last year. I think he was 750 to 1 and got into, I think even our friend Ben Coley tipped him at 750s, or a few others might have done in side markets in that event, but he went very close to one, and I think he traded favourite at one stage there on the Sunday. So yeah, I certainly agree with you on that there. But in terms of if you're looking at a winner, I think you still got to look to the top 25 in the world and those data golf rankings, and I'd be very surprised if the winner. Obviously, Open Championships down the years, there's definitely been more surprises. There's definitely more room for it here than usual, but I wouldn't stray past the top 25 in the world myself.
Well, I mean, I'm going to end up taking some long shots because that's what I got to get some placements in there too. If someone can cash their T6 at a very deep number, it might be better than betting on Scotty Scheffler 4 to 1 or whatever he ends up coming in at. But I was giving some extra consideration to a guy I backed in Scotland this week, and I'll probably end up backing him next week, presuming he's in. Maybe he's not even in the tournament, but it's Rasmus Nørgaard Peterson, who just lights it up tee to green, has already kind of showed out in his young career at the Dunhill Links that maybe he's just perfectly suited for this kind of thing. Almost like Ryan Fox in that way, where you get him at a course like this, and it's not like he played Oakmont poorly. And I think that weirdly, although the courses probably have nothing similar to them, when you take a look at the top of that Oakmont leaderboard, it's a hell of a lot of guys that play well at Open Championships.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on Nørgaard Peterson last week in Germany. Slightly disappointing. He was 3 or 4 back heading into the final day, and had kind of stalled on the final day. But I'm a big fan of his. Big fan. just like you, I'm on this week in Scotland. I'm absolutely licking my chops at getting 80-1 in a field of, obviously you're kind of resigned to the fact of kind of backing him in a DP World Tour event between 10 and 20-1 and kind of landing his first victory. But now you've got the chance, and I think it was similar almost to Wyndham Clark uh, in low grade PGA Tour events. He was going off 14, 16, 18-1 favourite in many of those events. And then you get him winning at Quail Hollow at 66s. I think it's better to take these guys like Neergaard Peterson in the stronger fields. I think he's got a great chance in Scotland this week. And also next week, you look to the Højgaard brothers, who obviously have a great chance in Scotland this week as well. But they've more than got the credentials to win an Open Championship. Obviously, Rasmus won the Irish Open at Royal County Down last year, Pip and Rory McIlroy. So if you're looking at TP World Tour guys, those special talents are maybe the ones to look to who could possibly get over the line. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Neergaard Peterson stock.
Yeah, Jordan Smith comes in pretty good form too, but I feel like I say that to every Open Championship, and he just kind of leaves me high and dry.
Yeah, he's a difficult one to follow. Is he in the field, Jordan Smith? Yeah, he is actually, isn't he?
Did he end up?
I think he is.
Yeah, I believe that he is. Yeah, he seems to end up in every major field.
Yeah, obviously played well last week as well. Great tee to green game. So yeah, every chance of going well. I think you're 250-1 here this side of the pond for Jordan Smith. So yeah, as you say, there's always outsiders to look at in this. You could make the frame if you're getting 8, 10 places. So that'll be plenty of people's modus operandi this next week at the Open. But as I say, for me, if you're looking to find a winner, it'll be probably sub 66-1.
Well, let me run a few of these names by you before we get it. I only have one bet actually placed so far for the Open, and I made it 4 or 5 months ago. I have Straka at 110-1 to win. He has the runner-up to the one that Herman won 2 years ago. Obviously, the PGA National correlation. And when I looked at the type of players that did well at Portrush last time, I was thinking, well, Straka's around the green game isn't great. It's not horrible, but it's not great. But he's accurate. He's one of the best iron players on tour. I think he's second to Scotty Scheffler. And dude can putt in the right circumstances.
Yeah, I'm absolutely on board with it. I'm on board at 100-1 as well. A couple of months ago, Sepp Straka. Not quite as keen on it now as what it was maybe a month or so ago. But it's worth pointing out that last time out at the US Open, I think he went off around 33-40-1 with the bookmakers, 50 on the exchanges. And Justin Thomas, for example, went off Victor Hovland went off 70 on the exchanges and 40-50-1 for the US Open. Obviously, Hovland played well. Straka didn't. But this time around, you're seeing Straka at almost 3 times the price as Victor Hovland. Victor Hovland's going to come on under severe pressure with a short game around Portrush. So earlier on in the year, I was really keen on Straka for this. And then when I looked at the prices for the US Open, I was even more keen when I was thinking, the prices are flipped here for an event that Straka clearly has a better chance in. Is he in quite the same form as what he was early on in the year? Probably not, but he's definitely one that I'm quite keen on, especially with the PGA National link as well.
Well, that's what I wanted to point out here to you. And I'm with you that I actually backed Hovland, and we'll see how the neck injury goes for him in Scotland, because almost what you pointed out, that the around the green, the tight surfaces at Portrush, we're going to need to get the ball up and stop it. That's absolutely not what Victor Hovland does. At least at the Renaissance Club, he can play a bump and run or two. He'll probably hit a ton of greens in regulation. That he putts well enough that maybe he can get out of that circumstance. I liked his number. I will not be backing him at Portrush, but these are the numbers of the players with more than 4 rounds at PGA National. So we're going to take their past 12 rounds, average them out, tee to green. Justin Thomas is by far the best player at PGA National of any of these guys. Tommy is second. Straka is third. Victor Perez and Adam Scott is your top 5. After that, you go Gerard, Jake Knapp, Daniel Berger, Gary Woodland, Alex Noren, Ben Ann, and Keith Mitchell. Robert McIntyre's up there as well, but it's only 4 rounds for him. So just one time through. Those are your tee to green leaders. When you start factoring in putting, I think that's less relevant to what we're going to be seeing at Portrush, just because I can't imagine these greens are anywhere near the same.
Yeah, I'm with you. And there's various names there that are going to be plenty of people's betting slips next week. One Adam Scott, for example, great record there around PGA National. And it is, PGA National is really important links when it comes to the Open, but in particular Portrush, I think, because it's usually windy around there in Florida at PGA National, but it's always played through the air, which is the task at Portrush. It's exactly the same. Approach play is going to be played through the air. It's not going to be the traditional link style that maybe won Brian Harman an Open at Liverpool. The likes of Cameron Smith and Cameron Young got into contention at St Andrews. This is a totally different links game required here, and I think you make a great point that those players, obviously Larry has a great record there, Straka does, Justin Thomas, who you've already mentioned, not only does he have a great record, but we know his ability from tight lays around the green. So they're all the type of golfers that you got to be looking to, and PGA National is a great link.
I would just be hoping, if I was going to back Adam Scott, I see him at 80-1 right now. I did not bet him. I know a lot of people did, so sorry to you guys if you bet on Adam Scott and my outcome happens, where he just sucks in Scotland. Then all of a sudden, his number will be 125 or 130.
Yeah, well, I backed. I didn't tip him in the US Open on my column, but I did have a few quid on him at really fancy prices. I think there was upwards of 400-1 on the exchange for the US Open, so I was quite keen on him performing there in the final round at Oakmont. It just didn't really happen for him. But as you say, if he goes well, obviously he came from the clouds in Scotland last year for a runner-up finish. Depending on how he plays, he wasn't really for me this week. It's just I often kind of play Adam Scott at the wrong times for some reason. Maybe I should be following him in after having him a few quid in the US Open. But I backed him here in 2019, believe it or not, as well, for many of the same reasons as what we've mentioned before. And he bombed out. He was no good. So it remains to be seen how he goes in Scotland this week. But as you say, a bad week in Scotland wouldn't put me off. I think the sweet spot is almost around 10th to 20th place. I think Harman was around 15th. I think Schofler last year was 13th, I think, in the Scottish Open. And if you think back to McIlroy when he won the Masters, I think the week before he wasn't exactly in contention, but I think he got into the top 10 there over the weekend. That seems like perfect prep for me. So those guys not quite in contention this week in Scotland, but who finished well over the weekend for a backdoor top 10 finish or something, they're the ones that you could keep an eye on.
Yeah, I know a few people going. You're going to be on the grounds, and obviously you were there last time around. Is there a spot that you would recommend for new people to the course to post up? Is there a particular hole where you can see two at the same time?
Yes. Don't quote me on the holes though. It's a par 3 on the back 9. Let me see if I've got
13 and 16 are the back 9 par 3s.
It's going to be 13. I think it's going to be 13, and it is 17 that runs alongside it. So there's grandstands there's a grandstand at the par 3 that you are side on watching the par 3, and the green is right in front of you, and the 17th green is just to the left of you. So I'm pretty sure it's the 13th par 3 and the 17th green right beside it. Whatever par 3 is beside the 17th green anyway, but I'm pretty sure it's the 13th. It's a great spot to sit. Obviously, there's a grandstand behind the 16th par 3, which is an unbelievable golf hole. It's called Calamity Corner, with a massive cliff edge off the right-hand side. You hit it 6 or 7 yards off the green to the right, and you are in unbelievable trouble. It actually reminds me of the hole, I think, was it the 17th at Lake Michigan in the Ryder Cup, where Jordan Spieth hit the unbelievable chip from 30 feet below the green. That's what that hole reminds me of, that if you hit it off, and obviously this one's to the right-hand side, but if you hit it down there, you're going to face a Spieth-like chip, or you're going to be hitting 3 off the tee or whatever. But that's another really exciting par 3 to sit at. It's got, as I say, it's called Calamity Corner. So there's going to be plenty of disasters around there.
Well, there's a bunch of disaster holes. Like I'm looking at 11 was the hardest hole last time, and it had a bogey or worse rate of 37%. Number 14, another long par 4, is the second toughest one. That was around a 37% bogey or worse rate. 16, the third hardest hole, was 28% bogey rate or worse, and 18 was a 29% bogey or worse rate. It feels like, and obviously Shane Lowry just kind of ran away from it last time. Tommy fell back a little bit. Lowry ends up winning by 6. But if someone was able to post early in the day, would it be inconceivable to think like, hey, guys can drop 3-4 shots here on the back and just collapse, and someone finishing 2 hours earlier could potentially win this?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and hopefully we get a closer finish than last time. Uh, Obviously, it was only ever a 2-man race anyway on the final day. So yeah, I totally agree with you there that a score posted is going to put tremendous pressure on those coming in. As I say, holes 1 to 5 are your scoring holes in this course, and then they are often played downwind. Most always played downwind. I'd be surprised if there's many wind changes here throughout the week. Holes 1 to 5 will play downwind. They're your scoring holes. The 5th obviously plays towards the sea. A green just right out in the cliff edge, and it's a drivable par 4 as well. You've got a pretty easy par 5 second hole, and you've got a gentle opener as long as you can keep it in play off the tee. It's an iron off the tee, really, off the first. So there are your scoring holes, and from then on, it's going to be hanging on. Every single hole is then played towards the clubhouse is more than likely going to be into the wind for the whole week from 6 onwards. So it really is an easy start to the golf course and a really tough finish. So if anyone can score well, yeah, especially betting and running, if you can get a fancy price about someone finishing well. So hopefully we get a close one. As I say, the weather's good, so it would be disappointing. Obviously, it's great to be there, and if the sun's shining and you're happy to hold a beer in your hand without being too cold, which is not often the case at an Open Championship, that'll be great. But it would be disappointing not to get some bad weather at some point. Squalls often do come in here at Portrush, and they're in and out in a flash, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and that's kind of the 4 seasons in one day theme that you get at Portrush a lot of the time. It would be disappointing if that evaded us at this Open Championship, because it's really fun when we get that kind of weather. But as I say, right now it does look pretty good. So that would obviously negate the chances of someone posting a score. If it's good weather, it remains to be seen.
I just had one question about number 5. It's going to play just under, it's like 380 yards, 385 yards. If you have the wind at your back, can you make a run at it, or is the green too elevated that you can't run it up?
No, that's one of the flat greens in a golf course. There's no slopes around on that. In fact, the slopes, if anything, around that green to the left-hand side, they sit up so they help a drive going down. You can almost hit it at that bank if you're long enough. Hit it towards that bank and it'll roll off onto the green. It's a really scoreable hole, I think. I remember Bruce Koepka driving it a couple of times in 2019. And as long as the wind isn't India, it usually isn't. It's usually downwind of those first 5 holes, and 5 plays alongside. So the 5th wind kind of is left to right, which it's a left to right hole playing towards a green on the cliff. So the wind usually suits fading the ball down there and getting it towards the green. So yeah, it's always going to be drivable. And the green's it's a really good scoring hole. And obviously you've got out of bounds, the cliff just about 10 yards over the green. So likes of Bryson, will need to hold on a little on that hole.
Are you going to be doing any content from the course, or are you just going to be enjoying your time?
I'm going to be enjoying my time, Pat. I'm going to be beard up. I'm going to be hopefully have a few good names running for me. I look to be getting off to a fast start. Larry got off to a fast start the last time, as I say, on those first 5 holes. So maybe if you're looking to bet and play in running, some kind of link specialist who gets off there. I wouldn't want to be 1 or 2 over after those first 6 holes. I really wouldn't. I think your chances will almost be gone on a Thursday at that point. You need to get off to a fast start. But yeah, I'll be giving the content a miss really for the week. And me and my brothers and a few friends are heading up, and we've got tents, and we'll be in Portrush in the bar. So if anyone's listening here, coming over from across the pond and they see me, please say hello. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a cracking week.
Yeah, well, if you end up going out somewhere, maybe you can organize something. You can follow Niall on X at BetGolfWorld, and maybe you can catch him out at Portrush. Coming up after this, we are going to be talking to Tom Jacobs of OddsChecker and Mayo Media Network about some sleeper potential names only from the DP World Tour, so stay tuned. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Part of my wellness routine this year, at least in the summer, has been focus more on family and focus more on Pat Mayo. So, I've been doing fewer shows, upping the exercise, eating better, and a lot of people don't have the privilege and luxury that I do to be able to take time off like that, especially during the summer when stuff can start to stress you out. If you have kids, there is no summer for you. It's just daily, non-stop grinding every single day. Couple that with workplace stress, and it's a bit difficult. Workplace stress right now is one of the top causes of declining mental health, with 61% of the global workforce experiencing a higher than normal amount of stress. So maybe BetterHelp is exactly what you need to do. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you feel anything going on with you, you need to go to betterhelp.com/PatMayo right now. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. My listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/PatMayo. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/PatMayo. Feeling stuck in your daily wellness routine? You're not alone. Our friends at Cornbread Hemp, they heard you. Their organic CBD gummies are made to help you feel better, whether it's stress and poor sleep or just needing a moment to unwind. Personally, I started taking them before a round of golf because I've been dealing with this tennis elbow issue. It's starting to go away, but it tightens up on me throughout the course of the round. So just when I pop a Cornbread Hemp CBD gummy, all of a sudden loosen right up, playing a lot better. Highly recommended if your muscles seize up or get tight during a round of golf. CBD might be just what you need to level up your daily routine. Cornbread Hemp uses only the best parts of hemp plant, the flower, for purest and the most potent CBD. No fillers, no junk, just full spectrum goodness. Right now, they're offering 30% off your first order. So go to cornbreadhemp.com/PatMayo and use code PatMayo at checkout. That's cornbreadhemp.com/PatMayo with code PatMayo to get 30% off your first order. As promised, Tom Jacobs from Odds Checker and host of the DP World Tour Picks and Bets on Mayo Media Network on the line to talk about some DP World Tour players who might actually have a chance at the Open Championship. Tom, we see this every year. What was it last year? Da Vinci Code, Dan Brown was just lingering there, smoking cigs in the rain the entire time. Do you have a couple of these guys this year that could actually do something at the Open?
I think there's a few. So there's a few more unknowns this year. I feel like it's more of a potential as opposed to kind of tried and tested. We've got one name there you kind of already mentioned, but generally speaking, there's a lot of guys now that have got the perfect skill set to really succeed in major events. One of them has played one recently, which is nice. And then we've got guys that potentially perennially fall short of what they should, but could step up here. So, yeah, really excited. I think knowing that we've got the Scottish Open this week and can kind of look at that to see how some of these players step up in a bigger field is going to be really important.
Who has stood out to you so far on DP? Has it been Cantor and Chikara? Because those are the two that I just default back to the entire year.
Yeah, Cantor's kind of really evolved since he come back from the Live Tour, kind of served his kind of ban, came back playing really well, won again. So he's got 2 wins now at this level. Really good driver of the golf ball. His form is up and down, and I would like to see a little bit more consistency from him just based on the fact that he's got the perfect skill set. So he hasn't quite made the list of the 4 that I've kind of brought here as potential contenders, I guess is probably the right word for it. But he's certainly in the mix, right? Chikara is a unbelievable talent. I think actually probably overlooked because he had that little stint on Live. I think people have soured on him, which is, fair enough. That is kind of what people do. But he's really turned it around and kickstarts his career again on the DP World Tour.
Well, it's funny to think about Chikara because even in his words, that when Ludwig started getting all of the praise
Yeah.
for being the next elite player in the world, that Chikara felt like he was very much on the same level as Ludwig. He just decided to go to live and get the paycheck coming out, that everyone just forgot about him. I don't know if he's as talented as Ludwig, but I think he's actually probably a lot closer to him than anyone realizes.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair assessment. I don't think he is Ludwig as he'd like to think he is. I like the confidence and I admire the fact that he believes he's kind of on that level. I think he's just short of that, but look, he can only continue to impress in the events that he's playing, and I do believe if he went over to the PJ Tour, which he'll have a chance to do probably next season. I do believe he can succeed. He's got all the skills. He's got the right mindset. He's blown up a couple of times in contention, but nothing to suggest we should be worried about it. He's kind of already won, and that was when he didn't have all his playing rights. So now he's a bit more secure. He should be full systems go.
So I spoke with Niall a little bit earlier to break down Royal Portrush, and one of the things that he articulated to me from having been there and seeing some of the guys that had succeeded there in 2019 was not your typical Open Championship Rota venue. Not a lot of let's keep it low, roll the ball up, get it onto the green. Just a lot of putting the ball in the air this week with some elevated greens. You're not going to be able to play your typical link style, what we associate with the Open Championship. So who are these four guys? I'm excited to hear about them.
Yeah, no, I think that plays actually into the hands of, because a couple of these haven't really even played in the Open Championship, or if they have, they haven't played well. So look, the first one is Jordan Smith, and it's a name that will kind of make us shudder. I guess it's kind of the DP World Tour version of Tommy Fleetwood at this point. He's a couple of times now come close to the PJ Tour card, missed out quite cruelly in the end. He's already had a couple of second place finishes in recent weeks. He was second last week, second at the China Open, lost to Daniel Brown last week, interestingly. But he's been fourth at the Sadal, seventh at the Turkish Airlines. So he's been really consistent again. And when you look at Smith, he's of the group, he's the one with the kind of major pedigree. He's got a top 10 in the PGA Championship, top 20 in the US Open as well. So he's been there and done it. And his skill set is, a really tired player, tee to green. And actually, if it doesn't play into those kind of typical Open conditions where he's kind of got crazy up and downs and things like that, it could really benefit him because he is just a kind of tee to green merchant.
Yeah, I do think that not necessarily crazy up and downs. It was funny just seeing the scoreboard, the scorecard in the final leaderboard from last time around. It's basically just guys who play well at the Honda Classic.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think it's one of those that if Jordan Smith was playing the Honda Classic on the PGA Tour next season, I would probably look at backing him. He's just that type of player who I generally think he is going to be as good as the sort of playing conditions allow him to be. He is an incredibly steady player. He just doesn't win. He's just hit that with that kind of Tommy Fleetwood moniker of doesn't get it done when he's in contention. And look, if we're just looking for a guy that can kind of top 10, top 20 this week or the Open Championship in a week's time, he's going to be on that kind of list. Whether he can win an elite field, we'll find out. He struggles enough on the DP World Tour, but he's got the right skill set.
Yeah, and I don't think that we're thinking about anyone for being a winner from this selection of guys. Listen, if they get into contention, who knows? Tristan Lawrence could have won last year if Xander didn't go absolutely mental on the back nine and everyone else faded away. And no one really would have thought that, despite having wins on the DP World Tour. He was 750 to 1. Just, can we get someone into contention? Can we get a name on the leaderboard on Sunday from the backpack? So Jordan Smith would be one. Niall and I actually joked about Jordan Smith, is that every time that you go to back him, he just comes up so short.
Yeah. And it's always disappointing. And look, I find that with a couple of players, you look at it and think, right, this is their time. You get them one of my processes, generally speaking, in these, typical events, we do the DP World Tour every week, me and Sky or Ryan, when we get to kind of Wentworth and the Scottish Open and you get a chance to play some of these guys at bigger odds, we're backing Jordan Smith this week, potentially over 100 to 1 in the Scottish Open when he's typically kind of 12, 14, 16 to 1 favourite. I tend to like to take that opportunity and hope that he kind of places and makes a run at a win rather than trying to rely on him, as a favourite. So, yeah, I think it's one of those where when he's probably got slightly lower expectations, it's a benefit because I'm sure he looks into the fact that he's a playing favourite every week and expects to kind of rise up to it.
And you get probably a better payout for a third place finish from Jordan Smith at the Scottish Open or the Open Championship than you would at the Volvo China Open.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people don't really consider that. I think people just want winners only and don't really think about the each way odds. And it's really important, right? I guess it's, in certain places in the US, you don't always get these each ways and that kind of plays into people's thinking and they just want winners. And as you said, Pat, trying to nail down 4 or 5 guys from DP World Tour that can actually win is tough. So one of the reasons we don't see them so much now is because they're on the PGA Tour, right? Like if you talk to me about Ryan Fox a year ago, we could have identified him as a potential winner next week. Like that's someone that's on the radar, but we now know he's a 2-time PGA Tour winner and very much playing across both tours.
And someone who I think is going to be likely a pretty popular pick.
Yeah, deservedly so as well. Like I think he was right in the mix after round 1, stayed there kind of all week. I could really see him having a good week, and he's kind of 80-1 over here, and I would definitely bet that now. So looking at kind of the next guy, you've already mentioned him. Like Daniel Brown finished 10th in the Open last year, and he was the first round leader. He was only 2 shots back after rounds 2 and 3, and yes, he faltered on the final day, but that's kind of to be expected. But he's only kind of 30 years of age. He's had 3 seasons, or this is his 3rd full season on the DP World Tour. He won in the first year. He's won again, last week. He's already lost in the playoff earlier this season in Bahrain, where Laurie Cantor was as well. There seems to be a lot of upside. Look at the tail end of last year, top 4 finishes in the Irish Open, the Andalusia Masters, which are really tough events as well. So the fact that he's such a good driver of the golf ball, accuracy and distance as well, I really like his chances of playing well. I mean, I backed him at 5-1 last week just before he kind of lifted the trophy, and that was the last chance to get those odds. But I can't see any reason why he couldn't get in the mix again.
So Daniel Brown, Jordan Smith. It seems like you do have a British bias on this. Is there?
I do. Yeah.
Is there anyone in Scandinavia just randomly, or did all those guys graduate to the PGA Tour?
No. Scandinavia, good mention. So Christopher Reitan is a kind of, I guess, not a childhood friend, but an amateur friend of kind of Victor Hovland, and was expected to be really good this season. He's won. He's finished 2nd twice and 4th, all in the last 7 starts. The 4th was last week. He's only behind Laurie Cantor and Martin Kuvra in the race for the PGA Tour card, so he's likely to get one. Absolutely sends it off the tee. Good streaky putter. When I said sort of at the top of the show, kind of some of the unknowns, he's one of them. Like, we have no idea how he's going to react to these kind of stronger fields, but he looks the perfect candidate to play well. He's going to be really confident. That's the main thing. So if he can kind of meander to a top 20, top 30 in the Scottish and feel really confident, that's going to, pay host to his chances in Ireland, Northern Ireland.
I backed him this week at the Scottish at 200-1. If he comes 7th, I'm going to be very happy with that result. But I don't even really know what he does well. I'm not watching, because now my kids are a little bit older. I try to sleep in as much as possible on the weekends, as much as they'll allow me. And then they want to watch their shows in the morning. So I'm just simply not watching as much DP World Tour as I did when they were 3 and 4 and 2, because that was my go-to jam on the weekends. I mean, 5 a.m. It's like, let's watch what's going down the stretch in Europe.
Yeah, he's a really good driver of the golf ball, top 15 in strokes gained off the tee on the DP World Tour, 20th in kind of distance, and a couple of guys ahead of him have only played limited rounds, so it's probably higher than that. He's just a big driver and a good putter, and he can get hot with the lines, and that's obviously going to be really important if he's going to do the whole week. But yeah, this is something that has been promised earlier in his career. He was expected to be maybe not quite as good as kind of finishing inside the top 4 for 5 of his last 7 events, whatever it was, but he's someone that could, win multiple times on the tour this season, and that's the kind of value we're looking for.
So, who's the last one?
I've got 2 more. So I've got Marco Peng, who
my guy.
he finished top 30 in the PGA Championship. That was his first major cut in 3 attempts. Now the 2 missed cuts did come in the Open Championship, which is a little bit disappointing. But he does have linked pedigree. He won the Scottish Amateur Stroke Play, back in, I guess it was like 2015, and it took a while for him to get going. He had a really kind of promising amateur career, and he didn't quite live up to that in the early goings, but he won for the first time on the Challenge Tour in 2023, started coming good in 2024, and then got hit with a gambling ban. So quickly recovered from that, got his first win at this level this season, and now he just looks like that type of person that's just going to be one of the best players on the DP World Tour. And, there is going to be a bit of a gap between that and the PGA Tour, but if he can get there, I'm excited to see what he can do. He drives the ball really nicely, gained a bunch off the tee last week in Germany. And now last 3 straight events, he's finished out the top 25. That was after finishing 28th at the PGA. He won in China, 3rd in South Africa, all after a really disruptive start to the year. I think Marco Peng is someone to keep an eye on for the long term.
Yeah, I like him too. Like, he absolutely sends it off the tee, which I always enjoy. I don't know if that's going to be required at Portrush, however.
Yeah, like I don't. It's always one of those things, right? Like I don't think it's a prerequisite for success at that golf course, but I think any time you can send it is obviously a bonus, and it just means that if you can play sensibly and club down, hit a 3-wood, whatever, just opening that kind of arsenal up is really good. And also, I don't think he's a type that just is really wild off the tee. The accuracy has been there on his best weeks as well. Yeah, pretty accurate at the PGA Championship, drove it really nicely in all categories. So the fact that he's now had that kind of exposure, playing, that was the first time he played stateside. So first stateside, first top 20 or 30 in the major. I'm really impressed with what he's doing. So fully expect him to kind of make the cut and see where he goes from there.
Did Sean Norris end up getting into the Open?
It's a good question. Let me just double check.
When it comes to like scoring average, like around the green, Sean Norris is just lighting it up in all of these categories.
Yeah, he's listed 500 to 1, so he's in. Sean Norris, veteran, plays these events, an awful lot. Gets in he plays a lot in Japan and across the two main tours as well. So I could see the Sean Norris shout and top 20, top 10, top South African, whatever we want to do these days. Now we haven't got Louis Eustace and Charles Schwartz or peppering the leaderboards. That's always a fun way to play.
Hey, we have Louis Eustace in this time around.
Interesting. I mean, he's not a real golfer anymore, so I think we're probably okay. Sean Norris can take him on in that. I guess we've probably got like Bezaden out and Van Rooyen as well, so it's going to be a tough heat, but that's the sort of place I'll be looking at him. The other guy I've got on my list is Daniel Hillier, who's a little bit more rogue. The form isn't there in the same way that it is everybody else. I mean, Jordan Smith playing very good, Raitan and Peng as well. Daniel Brown obviously just won, but Hillier was top 20 in the Open Championship last year. He finished second to Tyrrell Hatton at the start of the year in the Dubai Desert Classic, and that field had Rory McIlroy, he was 4th, Reed 10th, McIntyre and Fleetwood were inside the top 20 as well. It's got top 20s at Wentworth, which is obviously the signature event over here. The Dunhill Links as well, grew up playing in Australia and New Zealand, so should be able to kind of cope with the conditions. I think Daniel Hillier is someone that, look, he's not going to be the obvious answer because of his form, but it's going to be someone that's pretty popular with people that watch DPR Tour regularly.
I have probably backed him 5 times a year for the past 3 years, and every time I back him, I think he comes in dead last.
So potentially not going to be able to convince you on that one. I think it's
I want a reason to get in on, because I always see it. Like whenever it was like, who was the other Australian guy that was like that? Mav Antcliffe, where you'd see him in like particular rounds. Like, this guy might be the best player in the world. Like, he just hits it 2 feet every single time. And when you see him shoot his 81s, they don't show him on TV then. So they're like, how the hell did he shoot 81? You can't find any information on it. But Hillier's the same way, that just every now and then he just ball striking wise gets crazy. I just don't know if he can putt.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a big hindrance. I think his around the green game can be pretty suspect at times as well. So there is kind of prohibitions to a lot of them. His approach play was awful in Germany, and the form is just not there. But I think that's the sort of thing that can kind of open it up. I think links golf can be the great equalizer. I know it's not the kind of typical run it across the ground and keep out of the wind type that we've mentioned in previous venues, but certainly like that can free people up, just being familiar with the surroundings, enjoying it, not moaning about a bit of wind, and that is always quite key. And I think Hillier is the type that will relish that challenge. And I just like the fact that we've got evidence of him playing so well in big events, second behind Tyrrell Hatton in Dubai and top 20 in this event last year.
Do you have any early leans? As I was talking with Niall, Straka is the only guy that I've bet so far, and I bet that 4 or 5 months ago at this point. And fortunately, this is before I noticed the correlation between the PGA National leaderboard and what happened at Portrush. Now, maybe that's because of what the conditions were like at Portrush last time. Now that it seems to be a little bit drier, a little bit firmer, maybe that goes completely out the window. I hope not, because I'm probably going to base a lot of my picks around that. Is there any leans that you have that's not Scotty Scheffler? I mean, everyone's answer, who do you think is going to win? Probably Scotty Scheffler. But that's what, 17% of the time. The other 83% of the time, it's open for the rest of the people. So who do you think it could be?
Yeah, so look, I think when I've just been asked to who do I think is going to win without any odds considered, whether I want to bet them or not, it's been Jon Rahm. I think the way that he's contended in all the majors this season, or at least shown life in all of them for the first time after a couple of years at LIV, I'm really impressed with him. Tyrrell Hatton showed a lot in the US Open that he hasn't done in majors in the past. He's now quickly got into contention at the Masters after really hating that golf course. So there seems to be, despite the fact he loves to blow up, still a little bit of maturity sneaking into his game. I think McIntyre's too short. He's like 25 to 1 in the market, and he's a bigger price to win the Scottish Open this week. So just back him for that and see what happens. But if we're going further down the odds board, I do really like Fox. I mentioned that. I think there's probably still a slight element of him being underrated, despite the fact he's won twice on the PGA Tour now. And that's, as you said, he's going to be a pretty popular pick because people are going to look at what he did here in 2019. But a really good links player, good at Dunhill links, strong driver of the golf ball, pretty much has it all. And he said himself, like, he hasn't really performed in the majors in the way that he expected to. And we've seen him stare down Sam Burns in a playoff now. Maybe that's easier said than even that we kind of suggest. But like the 2 wins in a very quick succession suggests that he's kind of settled now. And once he's like that, I think it's all systems go with Ryan Fox.
He's also a really streaky player. Even just game logging his results over the past 5 years, you'll just see a bunch of miscuts, a bunch of terrible finishes, and then a 2-month run where there's nothing outside the top 20 with a bunch of wins. So he seems to be firmly in that mix right now. 3 wins, including a major, might be tough, but I do see him he's still lingering at 90-1 in some spots. So it seems good enough. Would you prefer him or Minwoo?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Like I'm pretty soured on Minwoo Lee. I think at this point he's kind of lost that momentum that he kind of gained. I know he finished 13th for the Rocket Classic, but he just hasn't done a lot between that win. I thought winning at the Houston Open was going to sneak some consistency in his game. I know the driving isn't necessarily a massive factor in the Open. Like, he can get really wild off the tee, and that kind of worries me when you've got conditions to play in as well. And he just hasn't really done it over this season, despite winning in Houston.
I was going to back Joost Luiten, but I saw that he's not in the field. So how did he not get into the field? He's been one of the better players in Europe.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess the negative is that he's like 150 years old and can't win on the DP World Tour. So easiest thing to put a line through. But yeah, like I really do like Fox. I mean, Lawrence is 150-1. He showed some signs again on PGA Tour recently. I wanted to bet Matt Wallace. He's had 2 top 25s, I think, back to back in the majors now. He's got a terrible Open record and not very good in links in general. So that was a bit of a concern. I think it's kind of this mid-range you got to kind of make a decision on. Is do we think that Joaquin Niemann could finally turn up in a major and really contend? Is Hideki now a massive price? He likes the Open Championship. That's where I think we're kind of looking. Patrick Reed, I do like. He's got the top 10 finish here in 2019. And look, he's going to want to get on the Ryder Cup. I think that's a really big discussion. So Patrick Reed, Ryan Fox at 80s, and then kind of looking towards the top of the market at Hatton and Rahm at the moment.
The other one I was looking at, and I know I'm starting to sound like Tambo now, but I know that approach is going to play a big factor. But let's just put that aside for a second. If I told you need an immaculate short game, be pretty good off the tee and mainly accurate because you want to avoid most of that OB on the opening stretch of holes. Someone who can light it up with the putter, someone who's very good for sort of in any conditions, not great off slopes, but good off shaved surfaces and has an immaculate PGA national record. I tell you, Sungjae would be the answer, but he can't hit an iron right now.
Sungjae's such a weird character. He feels like the part of Sungjae's game that we always loved was the consistency. You always felt like if you bet him, you're going to get through to the weekend, finish inside the top 20. I don't know what's happened to him. I don't know where it's gone. Whether he just seems to have lost any of that consistency to rely on. And he's turned up in the Masters this year, I believe, and there's signs of it. I just can't picture Sungjae winning an Open Championship, despite the fact that it potentially isn't in that same mold as we've seen in past events like Troon and things like that.
So if it's not Scotty at the top for you, it's Rahm. What do you fancy Rory's chances?
I'm slightly warming to them. I think it's really weird. When people look at the miscut in 2019, they kind of focus on the home pressure and being worried that he can't live up to it. The guy is the least patriotic person I've ever seen. He absolutely hates, anytime anyone throws an Ireland flag at him, there's always a dispute about Northern Ireland. He doesn't really bat for Northern Ireland. He potentially was going to back side with Great Britain in the Olympics. He's not that way inclined. I think it was a case of just the Open Championship was really important at that point. He hadn't won a major for a while. It's interesting with Rory. He looked like he kind of threw his toys out the pram after the Quail Hollow, didn't happen, after he couldn't win the kind of calendar year Grand Slam. The US Open, he decided to latch on about the kind of driver and wasn't really there. But it looks like he's kind of refocused again. I wish he'd get rid of this kind of talking about not talking at the press conferences. it seems to me that he has to put a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and that's what he needs to succeed. Then great. I would revert him back to the kind of start of the season where everyone was loving him and he was winning. So I think he's got a better chance than potentially he's getting credit for. Bit of a big gap between him and Scheffler. But yeah, I can't really back him in single digits.
No, single digits is going to be tough. And I was trying to think, is it Morikawa with the new caddy, with the Open experience? Obviously, he is an Open champion. Niall and I talked about Bryson, that it just, maybe it is Bryson's week, but this course just doesn't seem Bryson-esque.
No, and I think that the Morikawa one's really interesting. Like, a lot of people now are sort of saying, oh, well, the 2 weeks is not enough to strike up a relationship. I think Morikawa's made a really mature decision to go to someone like Billy Foster, because Foster is the type of player, type of caddy that won't let the player sort of demand things and not be talked down. I think he's someone that wants to be really hands-on and be a big part of it. A little bit like a sort of Stevie Williams light, and what Adam Scott used to do with having him 4 times a year. If he can get that kind of gig, I think he's going to really enjoy it. And if he plays well in Scotland, the number's going to crash, and it's going to be rightly so. So I think Foster could be the missing piece, and it's only a 2-week trial period. But yeah, I would be reasonably interested in siding with him.
One of the funny things, just to go back to Rory for a second, I believe Rory's opening round was the second best score of the week out of anyone to open here in 2019. Then he shot 79 on it.
Just Friday. Played absolutely awfully. Yeah. And I think I think people look at that ejection and just go, oh, I can't do that. I'm not going to live with that again. But look, this is a guy that, has the ability to do both. Like, he has the ability to be the absolute best player by a mile on the course. He also has the ability to completely crash out. We saw it with the terrible driver. So, yeah, I don't think he was amazing on day one in 2019, but he certainly wasn't as bad as he was on day 2. And I think a player like him can pretty much eradicate that from his memory and go again. So, I think the gap is too big between Scheffler and Rory, and that's kind of where I'm at the moment with it.
Anyone else that we haven't mentioned that you want to give a special shout to? I've been talking up Justin Thomas a little bit, but that always goes very poorly for me.
Yeah, I keep thinking the Justin Thomas thing's going to happen, and it doesn't quite get there. One thing I'd say about Justin Thomas is he's always been very good at coming over and playing in the Scottish Open and prepping for it, even before it was this kind of PGA Tour crossover. He's got the interest to be good at the Open Championship. I don't see it happening this year. The one I'm kind of interested in, and the odds aren't there this time because he's been contending, is Victor Hovland. I think there is a real obvious chance that he can get in the mix again. And he's got, a decent record in this major. So, yeah, I could see Victor Hovland really making a charge. And then I guess the other ones kind of mentioned, despite the fact he's probably slightly disappointing in the Open compared to what people think of him, because everyone just assumes an English player is going to be good at the Open Championship, is Matt Fitzpatrick. I think we're on a trajectory with him where he's getting close to being the player that he was. Maybe not a US Open winning player at the moment, but even in 2023, he won twice. Looks like he's on his way back to that. And his best finish in the Open was here in 2019. He finished 20th. So I think we're not at the bottom of the curve. I think people are realising where we are with Fitz, and I've bet on him this week. But I think we can get in slightly, especially if we back him this week before he hopefully performs really well in Scotland.
You're one of 3 people alive who didn't bet on Matt Fitzpatrick in Scotland?
No, I did bet him.
You did bet. Okay, so it's just me. It's like me and Jeff were the only two. We were like, yeah, sounds nice, but I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, I think for me, it's one of those, he has just been so good on the DP World Tour for so long. He is capable of winning any event that he plays in, really. It's really hard when he's had a year out of being any good at all. He's fell out of the top 80. So to then suddenly go in at 45-1, but I think it's warranted. He's back in form and showing the signs. And I had this kind of conversation yesterday with Barrow, when you're so meticulous as Matt Fitzpatrick is, and you are recording your driver swings on the range and noting down everything, if you take the eye off the ball even slightly, things can really deteriorate. And I think that's probably what happened. He got married last year. I imagine there's going to be a young family on the way. And when things like that happen, I think you can just not derail completely. I wouldn't blame that. He's had injuries and driver problems as well, but that's certainly a factor.
Yeah, and he got his braces off. So
I mean, yeah, you lose a sort of power there. It's Sam's on his haircut, I guess.
Yeah, they were like PED braces. I don't know exactly how those work, but when you win a major with braces, Maybe you got to keep him on for life.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I don't really associate Matt Fitzpatrick without braces, so it's really weird to kind of get onto this kind of slightly polished version of Matt Fitzpatrick. But he is playing well. Interestingly, the Sepp Straka thing, I've got a bit of Straka fatigue. I've kind of backed him already this season a couple of times in majors, and he's been really disappointing, as you all know. But there is nothing to suggest Sepp Straka can't win anything. I firmly believe that he could win this and win the Masters. I don't think that's an unworldly thing to think over the rest of his career because he's so good. But he's just been a major letdown this year. And I think that's because he's kind of realigned his expectations and is feeling the pressure of that.
He is. He has won twice this year, and him winning the Truist was really important for me.
Yeah.
I was glad to see it. Now, when I backed him at the Players and when I backed him at the U.S. Open, it was a complete disaster. Although he was inside the top 10 of the Players on Sunday before he completely melted down and just had the worst start possible. But it was nice to see him win a tournament that was a step up in class. Like when he won the Honda, Lowry was there. He got kind of lucky that Lowry got rained on, but he went out and won that tournament against 4 pretty good players. Then he wins the John Deere. He storms the castle on Sunday, shoots a 62, and passes a bunch of basic jabronis to win the John Deere Classic. Kind of the same thing at the Amex. There were some name players in that field, but not much. A bit easy birdie fest. But winning the Truist, it was a pretty difficult course. Played easier than I think that we thought it was going to play at the Cricket Club in Philadelphia, but he beat every good player in the world that week. So that sort of clinched that he could do it. And Byron always points out that when you go back and you look at guys that win majors, they usually have at least a second place finish in a major before that. Like Wyndham Clark and Brian Harmon are basically the two that come to mind that didn't. And Straka was second at the Open 2 years ago.
Yeah, and he was the closest challenger to Brian Harmon. He wasn't close, but he was there. And look, I think for me, it's just one of those ones where if you're like me and you've backed him for 2 of the majors already and you've been disappointed, it's really hard to go again. If you haven't backed him for the first 2 majors and you see 66-1 about one of the better players this season, then it's really quite an obvious grab. And I wouldn't put anyone off of it just because I had a bad experience. I mean, I know Data Golf has him kind of 20th as opposed to 10th. He's in the world rankings, but this is a guy that even since he's won, he's finished 3rd at the Memorial, at the PGA, I think it was. He kind of bounced back from the poor opening round to at least give himself a chance to make the cut. Same at the Masters. So, despite the fact he's missed the 3 major cuts so far this season, there's been good ball striking in there, and it's just been kind of really poor putting at times that's cost him. So, I don't see any reason why he can't get in the mix, and this could be a good major venue for him.
Do you think the Live guys have more of a chance this week than maybe in some of the other ones?
It's an interesting thought. I don't know if it's more. I think it's still a good chance. I think that kind of like Patrick Reed, as I said, is really high up for me. And I think it's, with Rahm, he's really motivated to kind of win again in this kind of fashion. And the Open Championship has always been relatively important to him, as it is most Spaniards. Hatton, now that he's kind of had that experience a couple of times, looks like he's in better shape. In terms of like the Niemans, Brooks, those guys, I don't know if there's any sort of elevated chance for them other than just, look, they haven't done it for the first 3 events and this is the final chance. The ones that's really sort of kind of the enigma and hard to work out is Cam Smith. Like, is he ever going to be good again in these events?
I could see him being good here.
Yeah, I see no reason why he couldn't be. It's just so hard to work him out. Like, it feels like he is just generally living his life, and golf is very secondary for him. And even like if you just said like he's playing poorly on Live, but he comes to fruition at the majors, that would be absolutely fine. But he just hasn't really done that, and that's quite eye-opening. Like, he was really poor with his irons at the PGA Championship and the US Open. Same again at the Masters. The short game's still there, so if he can find his irons and find a little bit of form, then great. I mean, he was at least positive with his irons at Dallas, very marginally. And the one time he was actually any good with his irons and off the tee was in Mexico. He finished 5th. So it's probably just more of his game's not there as opposed to anything else.
See, I was thinking more from the aspect on Live, not so much the very top end guys, be it Bryson or Rahm or Neiman, Hatton, like those 4 kind of separated from everyone else. But the older veteran type players, you just generally see an older winner at the Open Championship. Lee Westwood's probably too old, but he was 4th. He was 4th here last time. He qualified to get in, but there's some other pretty interesting names like Lucas Herbert I think has the right type of game for Portrush.
Yeah.
Carlos Ortiz, who we just saw do it at the U.S. Open. And then you have the home country guy. Tom McKibben's in this. I don't even know what he's been doing on Live. Dean Burmeister qualified as well. And I throw money at Burmeister every major anyway.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you're spot on with that assessment. I think with Herbert and Burmeister especially, they're kind of perfect for it. I have no idea how the thing's working out for Tom McKibben. I haven't, don't profess to have watched him much. I think the results are as good as you'd expect for him going over there as this kind of young, hungry guy. But yeah, I think so. I think like some of the older veterans, especially, Westwood's an interesting one because if I could pick someone to win the Open Championship, a lot of people would say Tommy Fleetwood over here. It would be Lee Westwood for me. He, has been my favourite player for most of his career. Or I haven't seen much of him since he's gone to Live, but there seems to have been a bit of a switch in his play recently. Whether it's just a case of trying to get onto this Open Championship and he's made his way there. Burmeister, I think it was Burmeister, Herbert, and Westwood all kind of won their qualifiers. So Liv was really well represented in that, and Herbert especially, I think, is pretty motivated.
It's very difficult on the Live website to find all the results that guys have had so far this year. They should make that easier for me.
Yeah, Liv's not great. I just kind of use the data golf stuff, and I feel like Westwood's kind of coming back into something. And as you said, he's probably too old. He's playing senior majors at this point, but people will back Richard Bland because he's playing really well in senior majors. So maybe we should do it with Westwood. I think he's probably still a good player. Probably not motivated to play very well on Live, which is really weird because a lot of people criticize them for not having that hunger to win anymore, but then say that they're really keen to win money. And you'd think $4 million would motivate you enough to win if that's your kind of attitude towards everything. So yeah, I think the one that was really disappointing to miss out was Ian Poulter. He played with his son, and Luke Poulter came really close to qualifying and then kind of burnt out at the end. But he'd be the one, I guess, that would love to have shown up and kind of got in the mix again.
Well, Tom Jacobs, host of the DP World Tour Picks and Bets on Mayo Media Network, basically every Monday evening, a little bit after the Jeff and I show comes out for the PGA Tour event. Are you guys recording next week for the Open Championship?
It's not at the moment. It's not on the cards because we haven't been doing it in the majors. But I feel like with the discussion we've just had today, there is enough people to talk about. So me and Sky may look into that. I think talking about kind of likes of Peng and right-hand are worth doing. So as long as there's enough for us to talk about, and it isn't the case of us just going, look, John Rahm's going to win and repeating what everyone else is going to be saying on the week, then it's definitely worthwhile doing.
Want to thank Niall and Tom for coming on and lending me their accents. Just glorious on the ears. We're going to head back to fantasynational.com, fantasynational.com/Mayo, in order to get yourself 20% off. We're going to build out a model, see how this works, see if we can find some guys for us. This time around, we're going to create a new model, and we're going to call it Open Portrush and see how it goes. Boom. So strokes gain total, probably not going to use strokes gain total. That's not one that we want to use. So let's add a stat. I said that approach is going to mean the most. I would still, 10 minutes later, agree with that. Going to also add around the green in, and we can take a look at some of the different surfaces as well. I mean, you can do that if you have the Fantasy National membership. We're also going to look at distance and accuracy because I want to weight it out a little bit more. I think that accuracy will be a bit more meaningful in the overall scheme of things, but I do want guys that do hit the ball a little bit further as well. We can see if we can find the best of who does the best of both. We did that with the U.S. Open. I bet on 3 of the 4 that we found during this research show. The 4th being JJ Spawn, who I was like, he has no chance to win. So what do I know? Fairways gained, fairways green. Where are we at here? We got to find distance. Where are we at? Distance gain, driving distance. Boom. So we'll throw that on. Most of the par 3s are between 175 and 200 yards. We're going to check that in as well. Par 4s gained, and we're just going to go to overall par 4s. You can even make a mixed condition model if you want and just do difficult par 4s because that's really what we're going to be trying to look at here. What else do we need to put in? I do think that opportunities gained is going to make a bit of a difference because there are going to be scoreable holes when the wind is down, so you need guys to go a little bit pin seeking. Putting is not going to be as much for me unless we do put it in the mixed condition model and go down to as slow a speed as possible, because I think that is really what's going to make everything work itself out. Anything else I really want to throw in here? I don't think so. I think this is good for right now. Let's just throw in putting in general just to have something else. So approach, most meaningful, I think around the green will be About half that will make fairways a little bit more than distance, but put both them in. And then we'll just start putting in par fours, opportunities a little bit lower because that's still a stat as well that correlates with approach. They're both approach numbers. That gives us 30% on approach, probably a bit too high. We'll shrink that down a little bit. 27 on approach. This gives us Scotty at number 1, locks that in. It's the most important thing you can do in golf. Around the green, 16, fairways 13, distance 5. I'm going to up distance just a little bit, put that to 7. Par 3s, 175 to 200 yards is 9th. Par 4s, overall, 15% opportunities gained, 8% in strokes gained putting, 6%. Let's load this in past 12 rounds, look in the short term, and see how we're doing here. All right, we got Scotty, Henley, Hideki. Hideki? Really? That blows my mind. Okay. Morikawa, Sam Burns, Victor Hovland, Davis Thompson are up next. Oh, God, Davis Thompson. Just don't... If there's some sort of guy who will massively outperform his number from rounds 1 to 3 into round 4, don't play him in round 4. Guy's been absolutely just a loser in round 4. It's been absolutely brutal for him. I guess, yeah, Hideki's approach play has actually really been heating up. His off the tee is absolutely dreadful. Now, is that distance or is that fairways? Let's see here. Fairways gained for him. Lower than average, and the distance has been bad. So when you're an average accuracy minus driver in terms of distance, that's not going to turn out pretty well for you. But overall, it's actually been... Did not realize Hideki was playing so well. And he's starting to putt a little bit more. Has pretty good open history from what I recall as well. I know as like an amateur, he played awesome. Yeah, he was I think he was 6th as an amateur. Has been bad the last 5 years outside of 2023. At the Open Championship. It started off his career very good. We know that older players end up doing well. It's funny to think about Hideki as someone who is old at this point. Let's see, Hideki, Matsuyama, age. I think he's in his 30s now, which is crazy. Yeah, he's 33. He's right around sort of the median age to do this. I'd love to see Hideki pick up his second major. We know how good he is around the green as well. He's been 20th in the short term. So overall, the top 20, Scheffler, Henley, Hideki, Collin, and Sam Burns. Victor Thompson, Hatton is up there, and he's really only getting his juice from the majors. So that's more impressive than almost anything else. He has not putted well in any of these. We know that you get him on links courses. He's like Mr. Links at 27 to 1. I don't know about that, but I do think he's going to be a very popular selection this week. Rightfully so. The glove, Lucas Glover is up there. Keegan Harry Hall, John Rahm, Nick Taylor, Patrick Reed, who's having another good run in Live this week. Adrien Sadier. Probably wouldn't look too much into that. Patrick Cantlay, Matt McNeely, Adam Scott, Potgieter, Brian Campbell. You got Thirsty Lawrence, who was top 5 last year at the Open Championship. Fowler, Spawn, Stenson, Chris Kirk, Ryan Fox. Spieth is up there. We'll see what happens with Spieth. Spieth has not played since withdrawing from the Travelers Championship with his neck injury. We'll see how that ends up affecting him, whether he actually enters the field or not next week. Now, if we take a look at the past 50 rounds, man, Rory rates out horribly for here. Opportunities gained, bad. Putting, great. Par 4's great. Driving distance, obviously great. Everything else kind of And this is over the past 50 rounds. You can also narrow this down to like the past 2 years if you want to, for taking a look at some guys, like the live guys and the older guys. We'll just bring in stats from a little bit longer. I don't want to spend the time parsing all that out right now. We can just talk about it and make mention of it in real time. So if you want to dig in at fantasynational.com/Mayo, then you can go do that yourself and try to figure it out. So over the past 50 rounds, the model looks like this. Very similar names, although Justin Thomas sneaks his way into the top 4. And this is all rounds, not just PGA National, by the way. Scotty, Morikawa, Henley, Thomas, and Fleetwood, Lowry, Straka, Keegan, Glover. Man, a lot of Lucas Glover. A lot of Lucas Glover on this list. Oh, boy. That's not going to turn out well for me. At least Kevin Yu has been, pummeled down. So that's probably good news for me. Connors, Berger, Smith, Cameron Smith, that is, who's finally actually having a good week on Live right now. So all of a sudden you see Mr. Short Game pop up. If he can just hit some fairways, big ask for old Cameron Smith, then maybe he could actually be all right here. Spawn, Rahm, Nick Taylor, Reed, Hideki again, Neiman, Ben Griffin, Louis. Louis's been awful. Awful on Live, so I probably wouldn't end up going to him. Aaron Rye, I think, is actually a pretty good look. Hovland, I can't get on board. Unless he ball strikes better than anyone, which is certainly on the table. Ditto for Ludwig, who's having a good run at. I think Ludwig and Victor, I think at the the old course, at something like the Scottish Open, where you don't need to get the ball up and down as much as possible, I think are pretty good. But the around the green play is just so bad that if that is really going to be a handsy thing here, then it's not going to be good. We've seen Cantlay struggle around the greens, Akshay struggle around the greens. The best player around the greens over the past 50 rounds, Sungjae, who can't hit an iron. Then you have Hideki, Cam Smith, Matt Wallace, whose name obviously, I believe it was Tom who mentioned that he was looking a little bit at Matt Wallace, or maybe it was Niall. I can't remember now. Interesting to see him pop up here. Plays hard courses really well. Keegan, Henley, Minwoo, another name that popped up earlier. Fleetwood, Reed Scheffler, Matteo Montecero is there. Okay, now we're looking a little bit better. You got to bring back some of that, 10 years ago PGA National experience. Thrust him in here. He actually played really well in Canada. Almost made that playoff with Fox and Burns. How's he done since? He was 6th at the Canadian Open. Don't really know much of what he's been up to. Haven't really been tracking him all that much. Wyndham Clark, Spieth, Hatton, Bezadenhout, Mac Hughes, Patty, Day, Campbell, Grazerman, Louis, Justin Thomas is there. Ben Ann, who are names we need to know? Harry Hall. Could Harry Hall just be JJ Spawn? He's already playing well at the Scottish, having a great year. I don't know what his major performances look like. I assume not good because he's Harry Hall, but he gains around the greens every week, gains on approach every week, and gains putting every single week. Comes in immaculate form, having another good week. What the hell are Harry Hall's odds to win this tournament? Now you have my attention, Harry Hall. You shouldn't probably have my attention, but here we are. Go to the Majors, go to the Open Championship, and find he's definitely not on the first page. Let's find some not even listed at this point. So when they update their odds over the weekend, I'm sure Harry Hall will get the boost into it. Marco Penge is up there. He only has 10 rounds to go from, but he's just bomb and gouge. Can't really putt, but I guess he chips well enough. Lucas Glover is up there. Finau is up there. A lot of names that, frankly, we saw last time at this course. Bryson and Rory, Brooks, Nick Taylor is there. Man, could Nick Taylor win this? Probably not, right? I just hope that if somehow we get a run out of like Nick Taylor and Zach Blair winning the 2 tournaments this week, I think I win like 70 grand. So I would be very excited about that. So let's go those 2 guys, and then you can take all my bets at the Open Championship. I'll be open for business if you want to bet against me. I thought that Aaron Rai would have been a little bit better. He does rank out 21st in the longer term model. It's just the distance and those long par 3s and the putting which sink him, but has won on Link style before, has played pretty well. I mean, he's won the Scottish Open before. He's played well at the Alfred Dunhill Links. I don't know how he's done at the Irish Opens. Or I think that Opens in general, maybe that's what we look at next, because we've seen overall the around the green play. The best players on approach are the ones that you probably would think of over the past 50 rounds. Scheffler, Lowry, Morikawa, Hovland, Straka. Cantlay is still up there, although that leans more towards history rather than his recent form. Rosner, Rahm, Henley. A lot of Henley. Neiman, Fleetwood, Akshay, Berger. That's 2 mentions of Berger now. Berger's around the green has been kind of dreadful. He's either kind of dreadful or really awesome. He ranks 14th in approach, 9th in fairways, 14th in par 4s, and 5th in opportunities gained. He did make the cut at the Scottish, but he's been like an abject failure now for a little bit of time. He had that really nice run, and maybe it's just the switch of venues. Like he was chipping really well in Florida earlier on this year, chipping really well in California, and then we left and we went sort of into Texas, we went to Ohio, we went to Pennsylvania, we went to the Northeast. Really, really bad. Can't putt, can't chip on any of these surfaces. Maybe I'll have to dig a little bit further into what he's doing at the Scottish in terms of his strokes gained. But maybe if he was able to get it back together a little bit, because it's a lot like Ryan Gerard in that sense, where you see Custy Gerard continues to ball strike the hell out of everything. Apparently he's not in the field. But it's crazy how poorly he's putting. If he could just putt a little bit better, we wouldn't be having this many problems. But he just continues to ball strike and lose like 4 strokes putting. He's like the old school Luke List in that sense, where, yeah, it'd be nice to be like, oh, if he can putt, everything's going to turn out fine. And he putts well once in a lifetime kind of thing. And you want to see something coming from him, I think, in one of these circumstances before you back him. Just something where he's not the worst guy in the field on the greens. And that's what I'd want to see out of Daniel Berger as well, that maybe if he wasn't chipping and putting himself out of tournaments, that all of a sudden we would be looking a little bit better. Let's see how he's doing. He's 3rd in approach at the Scottish at the time of this recording. He's lost 2 strokes putting and 4 strokes around the green. So nothing has improved for him in that regard. So let's put him on the fade list. Just can't have it going unless he runs so pure that I just don't think that he's ever really done that. So why would we end up looking at it that way? Worst players around the green, I think, is important to look at too. So there's a couple guys we have, nothing from. Sean Norris, who we mentioned a little bit earlier. Didn't realize he was so terrible around the greens. But I mean, that's frankly from a lot of time. You might want to go to the DP World Tour site in order to get some more DP stats to see how it's going a little bit. I mean, DP stats for golf. I don't need your DP stats out here. I don't know what you need to do in your private time, all right? Westwood's been bad. Nico Echeverria, historically bad around the greens. Ditto for Aldrich, bad around the greens. Thirsty Lawrence, bad around the greens. But we saw Lawrence at courses where you can run it up and play some bump and runs. All of a sudden, he looks a little bit better. And we even saw that in Canada a little bit as well. At Oakmont, because that was another place where Victor did pretty well because it was a lot of sand-esque shots. Scotty talked about this, that when you get nestled down in that rough at the U.S. Open, you're basically just hitting bunker shots, just hoping to gouge it. It comes out and rolls up somewhere near the hole. It's not as precise as what you're going to need to be at these courses. And this is generally what we're looking at right now. If you really want to use the filter, you can just go by like Florida courses or Southeast courses and see how guys do there. I'm not going to do that for here. You can do that. FantasyNational.com/Mayo. Akshay, really bad. Ludwig, very bad. Straka, very bad. That's not good news. Oh, here's another bad Kevin Ustat. Bad around the greens overall, but maybe he's been doing a little bit better. Who knows? Hopefully Straka can overcome that. And Kevin U's been hit or miss at some of these courses. Not really doing it for me there. Cameron Young, been pretty bad around the greens, although I think he's actually been doing better recently around the greens. Nope, that would be false. He just sucks around the greens. He's been putting a lot better recently. Kokrak, Victor, Hoagie, Herbert, which is weird because I actually in my mind would think of Herbert as actually a really good around the green player. Cantlay, Fowler, Rose have been bad over that time. You can shrink that sample down a little bit, but I wouldn't say that these guys are necessarily automatic fades for me. It's just not the spot where I want to be looking at. I need guys who are going to be able to grind out pars when they're not supposed to be able to. Like on surface, as I mentioned to Niall, this really should be a really good Spieth course, but he came T21 last time around, and Lord knows, he's probably not a bad DraftKings play because he's going to be low owned. Who knows where his game is at, but just overall, he's done so well at the Open Championship over the years. We're going to take a look back at the past, let's say, 4 seasons of Open Championship. So we'll click on 2025, 2024, 2023, 2022, and 2021. And then we're going to go down to our Open Championship filter down at the bottom and just see strokes gain total. Because we don't have good tee to green numbers here, proximity buckets for the Open Championship. So it's just easier to, good, I clicked off of that. Let's go click on 2021 as well. Take a look at this entire field and we'll sort by the average strokes gained of these. So we have those 5 years on right now. So we're looking back at the past 50 rounds of all courses. Then we're going to go to the Open Championship, where 100% of the Open Championships have been played at the Open Championship. So that's good to know. So we'll take a look at strokes gained total over that time. Who are the best players over the past 5 years per round at the Open Championships? Well, Cam Young's actually number one, with 2.62 strokes gained per round over his 12 rounds. Rahm is second. Dan Brown, the Da Vinci Code, who had that beautiful run last year, is third. Xander Berger in only 4 rounds. Spieth, there he is, in 16 rounds. Harmon, Sadam Kegawanajana, never heard of this guy. Apparently he was good in the one tournament he played. Morikawa, Scheffler, Lowry, Matthew Jordan, Jason Day, Justin Rose, Rory, Victor, Byung-Hun An, Tommy, Mista Lady, who is currently dead last on Live this week after opening with like an 81 in that difficult first round at Valderrama. Adam Scott, Mac Hughes is up there in 10 rounds. Cameron Smith, Louis Cantlay, Thirsty Lawrence, Connors, DJ and Hatton, Tom Kim, Mateo Manticero, and only his 4. I have no idea. I assume that's last year's Open Championship. It was last year's Open Championship. Played all 4 rounds. What a hero. Fitz, Kokrak, there's Straka. So Straka's been all right. Henley's been all right. So they're both up there as well, gaining over a stroke per round on the field. Again, we have to take a look at some of the weather concerns as well. We'll do that before we finish off here. Sergio, Bobby Mack, Tony Finau, Patrick Reed, Hideki are all up there. So I think what we found out from this show is that Henley and Hideki might be ads at their prices. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do at the top, but Straka, I think Henley's going to make that list. I'm going to see if 60 is the best number. If it's not, we're going to take a look into it. very far out weather recourse. Far out, man. We're taking a look at the weather report here. Wind finder, Portrush tide is what I'm looking at right now. We'll go down to Thursday for next week. We can see it right here. And winds up to 18. It looks actually pretty good. Bit of rain in the forecast. We'll see how that develops throughout the week. But again, Portrush, parentheses, tide, end parentheses, is the station you're going to want to look at. Friday, bit of rain overnight. Not much wind Friday or Saturday. Then you get to Sunday. Look at this. Wouldn't this be glorious for an Open Championship Sunday? Gusts up to 35. I think the wind looks pretty consistent directionally, except for a bit on Saturday. And a bit on Sunday afternoon, but swirling winds, might be wet, might be rainy. You could see some big blow-up scores if this holds for the Sunday. I didn't want to look too much into it because, listen, it's a week out. With the day out is probably not going to be a great barometer of what we're looking at for the barometer, honestly, in terms of the air pressure and the wind that we're looking at anyway. But that is the Open Championship preview. So excited to go every day this week. Monday with Jeff and Tim. We got Cam and the Best Bet Show on Tuesday. Tambo and the DraftKings picks. I'll be live on Wednesday night. Cut Sweat, maybe a watch along in the morning. Maybe round by round recaps because we get a little bit more life out of them in North America at least because they end a little bit earlier for us. So excited to have one more major championship before we move on to the rest of the events of the year. Then football starts. But if you want to get in the draw for that driver, do it by giving me your winner down in the comment section right now. And any content that you see this week, please share it around for me at the PME, on the Facebook page, at the newsletter, whatever it is. We could use your support as we bang out golf one more time for a major championship. All right, let's hit a winner. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience! Experience!